Gentlemen, we ready? Good morning. We'll call to order the March 4th, 2014 meeting of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners. At this time, I'd like to invite the Reverend Steve Jones from Vero Christian Church to lead us in the invocation. And please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Commissioner Wesley Davis. So everybody, please rise. Reverend, welcome.
Thank you. Shall we pray? Our Father in heaven, we intercede today for our county leaders. Guide their decisions that our residents may live peaceful, quiet lives of godliness and dignity. Thank you for each citizen who is here to participate in the process. We especially ask that you would bless Joe Flesher, Wesley Davis, Peter O'Brien, Tim Zork, Bob Solari, Dylan Reginald, and Joe Baird. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Under additions, deletions to the agenda, we had an addition from the county administrator for item 11A. Is there any other changes to the agenda?
Move approval. The agenda as amended.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner Flesher. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving to proclamations and presentations is a presentation and campaign update by Michael Kent, CEO, United Way of Indian River County. Michael, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Baird, is it Mr. Reingold? I haven't had the opportunity to meet you. We'll fix
Mr. Reingold, good to meet you,
We'll
sir.
fix that. Thank you very much for the opportunity to appear today. Today's one of those days where I get to do one of the things that's both most important and most fun in terms of my job, and that is to simply come before you and say thank you, not just to you, but to all the employees of the county who have so generously given in this year's campaign. We really can't do the work that we do, and to be honest, that our agencies do, without support from everyone. It's that classic scenario where everybody does what they can, you put it together, and you hope that with good judgment in terms of the allocation and in terms of the programs and service, that we can make a difference in our community. I wanted to share just a few numbers with you relative to the county. Indian River County employees in this campaign contributed $11,384. You have always been in the top 10 somewhere of our workplace campaigns. There's a lot of attrition in a lot of workplace campaigns. We understand that. Things significantly shifted in 2008, but we're doing well, and we're doing well still because so many folks are still connected and committed. But I went back and I was sitting at my desk last night before I left, so I ran a few numbers. In the last 10 years, Indian River County employees have contributed more than $164,000. And I actually ran it then. Our database electronically has 24 years of data. And in 24 years, Indian River County employees have given over $265,000. Now, to split a hair, that's actually only county employees because the constitutional officers run their own. You know who they are. I don't need to tell you. I did some quick math on them, and the fact is, if we lumped all of the county offices and all the county employees together with the supervisor of elections, property appraiser, tax collector, clerk, etc., over the last 24 years, it's $800,000 that employees in the county have given to United Way in support. I mean, that's significant. And it's fun and it's a pleasure, as I say, to be able to come here today in this campaign and just say thank you. I'm not going to go down the list of everyone who's obviously supported, but there's a couple. Well, there's one person I certainly want to point out, and that's Colleen Peterson. Colleen is in every workplace campaign, we've got to have somebody who kind of takes the lead. She's done a wonderful job in the last 2 or 3 years for us. We appreciate that work she's done as a campaign coordinator here. And not only do people participate in terms of dollars to us out of their checks, We get lots of support. We've had many county employees who sit with us in our citizens review panels. We've had a lot of your representatives actually help us in our campaign. Most recently, Mr. Solari, Mr. Baird, played an active role in our campaign cabinet. And we've even gotten a little help from some of your folk in helping us put up thermometers around town. For all of that, we want to, on behalf of United Way and our 32 partner agencies, just say thank you. We truly appreciate everything that is done on our behalf, the support that you give us, and to each and everyone who's chosen to give. I hope they hear this. I hope that you send emails out to all the subordinates, all the department heads, and let's get the word out. We do want to say thank you. You've given me a mic. I can't pass the opportunity to say campaign isn't over. We are doing well. We've got a significant goal this year, and in fact, if we hit it, I think it will be the largest amount of money that any United Way campaign has raised. And we're in that last stretch, that last 10 days or so, or last week of our public campaign. Actually, the campaign runs till May. Any money that comes in up through our May board meeting gets allocated and goes to agencies. But at some point, you've got to stop the active solicitation and get on to other business. So we've got a campaign event. So if anyone is interested and would like to know more, please give me a call at the United Way, 567-8900. Send me an email. We'd be happy to answer any questions for you. But we're doing well. I think we're coming down, and I think we're within maybe $60,000 right now of goal with about a week to go. So I mean, we're in a good place. We're certainly optimistic. And again, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it very much. I doubt that you do, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
I don't have a question, as a comment, Michael. I did serve on one of the citizen review panels, and that's quite an eye-opening experience, because you go into the agency. One of the ones we visited was Safe Space, and we were kind of sworn to secrecy because of location. But to see what the agencies do and the real people that they are helping in our community is pretty moving. And for people contributing, it's good to know that you all are doing the follow-up and making sure the dollars you invest in those agencies are appropriated properly and spent wisely and all that. So just a great program.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work, and good luck in hitting your campaign total.
Again, I appreciate it. We work just as hard giving it out as we do raising it.
Right.
And we're always looking for volunteers in our citizen review. Commissioners or members of the public, if you'd like to serve, we need 120 volunteers every year to do just what Commissioner O'Brien talked about. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. There's no minutes for approval. A couple informational items. Gentlemen, any discussion on the informational items? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything from consent?
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Davis. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to have a consent agenda item pulled for further discussion? Good morning, Ms. McKenzie.
Good morning. I believe it's L, the budget amendment. I have a question on one of the items there.
Okay, item L, miscellaneous budget amendment, is requested by Ms. McKenzie for additional discussion.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to have a consent agenda item pulled for additional discussion? Okay, seeing none, on a motion by Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Davis, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Item L is a miscellaneous budget amendment. Ms. McKenzie, would you like to address the item, please?
I believe in the amendment there's a list of different items that are up for revision, and one of them was an approval for Old Dixie Highway. It's already been voted on. But the question that I had was the scope, small communities outreach program funding that's available. Is there more information that can be provided on that particular grant? And the purpose of my reason for asking for that is that I understand that the 45th Street design was presented yesterday to a small group for review, and there were some questions regarding having curbing done, and curbing was not included in the design. So I'd also like to request to have a copy of that 45th Street design presented so that more people in the public could take a look at it. But the one thing that keeps coming up each time on this particular design is the lack of funding. And I'm trying to get a better understanding if this scope plan is still available, and if so, can it be looked at and applied to the needs for this particular design that's being done?
Thank you. Chris, you want to answer that, or Jason on the
Sure, I can respond. Chris Mora, Public Works Director for the county. The SCOP agreement stands for Small County Outreach Program, and it's a program whereby we can use DOT funding on a 50-50 local match to resurface particular roads. They're actually set up years in advance. In this case, in District 4 of DOT, there's only 2 counties, Martin County and Indian River County, that have a small enough population to qualify for these grants.
It's for resurfacing only, though?
It's for resurfacing. We can't really use it to rebuild roads or for landscaping or things like that. It's mainly for keeping up the roads that we have. In this case of Old Dixie Highway, we've known for years that there's patches of Old Dixie that are starting to get pretty poor as far as riding surface, so it's used as resurfacing money to keep those roads in better shape.
I think what Mr. McKenzie's asking for is just show her basically it can't be used for some of those things that we're saying that are expensive in some of the areas that she's talking about. So just the specifics, and Ms. McKenzie, not to put words in your mouth or anything, but just show you where it says in there this is for resurfacing only, can't be used for curb and gutter.
What I'm basically interested in is if these programs are available, rather than having to do the research and try to figure out are these opportunities that are available to get the projects that we need done, can staff provide a list of possible options for funding instead of hearing that it's not available? Because, again, I would hate to whitewash a broken fence. Mm-hmm. And yes, the landscaping thing, from what I understand, is been completed, but why not just bring everything together and make it what it should be one time and not have to go back and redo it and all that type of stuff? So if scope is not available, are there other programs like this that are available, whether it's Brownsfield or whatever? I'm not the expert on this stuff. I enjoy reading up on it, but I'd prefer to get opportunities.
I tell you who I've found has been extremely creative with things like this has been Phil Madsen through our MPO. He's been, as far as a lot of the grants that just seem to, he'll come to us and say other counties couldn't do it or didn't do it or something along those lines, and all of a sudden it's there. So that would probably be where I would start.
Okay, and then also the MPO had another workshop about a week ago regarding pedestrian and bike paths, and I had a brief discussion with Mr. Beard, and I won't go into what we talked about. But anyway, it seems as if there's little components of things going on. We talked about the Amtrak thing coming in, and then we have the design going simultaneously, and then we have this bicycle pedestrian program going at the same time. At some point, I'd like to make sure that everybody's talking so that if we're doing one thing over here with FDOT through, whether it's a complete neighborhood program or the MPO, that the conversation is with Public Works as well and with community development. So if everybody's doing a piece, we can put the puzzle together and get it done.
That's what MPO does. You should attend the MPO meetings. That's what they do.
I attended one MPO meeting, and I believe I was invited to the last MPO presentation that you had at GYAC regarding the bike and pedestrian. However, I was told at the meeting that was the last workshop, and I thank Mr. Madison for calling me back and letting me know that that was not the final. And some of the discussions that we had was to also include the Sheriff's Department for a public safety issue, the walking school bus, which also would have some valuable input, the SAT committees from the schools so that they can also get input as well that would help design these programs so they work for the community. So that was my request, is to find out more about scope and how it works, and is there any other funding options available?
Ms. McKenzie, to that point, usually once we have a kind of a final project design and we know what the cost is and exactly what the project is, staff, as Commissioner Davis mentioned, staff has been pretty good going out looking for grants that will help cover the cost of those projects. So I think I can tell you that we will look for all sources of funding once we have a final 45th Street plan and ready to move it forward.
It's my understanding, Commissioner Byrne, that only $350,000 has been committed to that particular project and will only cover landscaping. However, it doesn't address the full issues of what's needed for that street. So rather than just piecemeal what we need to do, if there could be some more discussion as far as MPO being involved and everybody coming together so we make this a nice package that gets the job done right, that would be greatly appreciated.
Sure.
And that was the only question I had today, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve item L?
Move approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That carries unanimously. Mr. Reingold.
To the chair, and I think the motion that was just made makes the point I was going to make, was that Ms. McKenzie had stated that you already voted on this item. Pursuant to the public meeting process that we've instituted, when an item is pulled based upon a comment or request from the public, that item is not voted on until after the public comment is taken. So I know there was, Ms. McKenzie had stated, oh, you've already taken action on this, but however, the action was not taken until just we had the motion and the second and the vote, which just happened now. I just wanted to make sure that was clear to anybody in the public who is concerned they didn't have their opportunity to be involved.
No, I'm clear on what you're talking about, but I think what she was talking about is this was allocating the funding on the decision that's been made prior to this.
Right. Yeah, there's two scope agreements, and one was August 20th and one was September 10th. So we had approved the scope agreement, now we're just moving the funds
Funding
to cover
it.
Right.
But technically, the consent motion was for the consent agenda, and it should have been consent agenda minus L, and then we approved L. So it's more housekeeping, but you're right.
Are we all clear? That now takes us to constitutional officers and government agencies. Darrell Laura, Indian River County Sheriff, Forfeiture Trust Fund, letter dated February 24, 2014.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Sheriff.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you each and every Tuesday, save the last Tuesday of the month. It's a great day in Indian River County. Before you have an opportunity to shift some dollars from drug dealers and thieves that we've lawfully and ethically confiscated their dollars, save taxpayers' dollars by shifting these dollars 15% to nonprofits which are listed in your agenda item. Appreciate your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Davis. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner. Have a great
Any
day.
opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Sheriff.
And
See you next Tuesday.
all our representatives from all of our law enforcement agencies,
Chiefs, thank you for being here.
thank you for taking the time. Collect more.
Yeah, really. Move on to public items. Public hearings A1, Windsor Properties request for abandonment of a portion of Savannah Drive within the Windsor development. This memorandum is dated February 20th, 2014. It is legislative in nature. And good morning, Mr. Bowling. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Stan Bowling, County Community Development Director.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Stan.
Sure.
I had an addition on this that it was also quasi-judicial as well. Could we clarify that, Counselor? I just wanted to ensure that was...
I think that's the next one.
Yeah, 10A1 is actually legislative. 10A2 is legislative and quasi-judicial.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption, Stan.
No, fine. This particular item is legislative. It's a right-of-way abandonment request on a portion of the Windsor development. This is an aerial showing the western portion, kind of the northwestern portion of the Windsor development off of State Road A1A, North Barrier Island. And you can see from this aerial, Savannah Drive in this location is essentially the western private perimeter roadway that serves single-family lots in Windsor. Further to the west are wetland and buffer areas, and then Jungle Trail, and eventually the Pelican Island Refuge. This particular request is for what we call a sliver of the existing private road right-of-way for Savannah Drive. Will have no impacts if abandoned. The county does have some interest in this right-of-way, since as a private road right-of-way there are some utility rights that are actually be abandoned along with this request. It's also a private roadway, so the applicant is working with the Property Owners Association at Windsor for the abandonment. This is another map showing the residential nature, the lot layout of the particular area. Again, the function of the roadway and all the utilities that are in this particular area would not be affected if the abandonment is approved. The owner of Lot 4 will pick up a little bit of area if the right-of-way abandonment goes through, as well as some area will be added to this Tract A, a common tract. And under a separate application, the applicant's working with the Property Owners Association to essentially trade some lot area and flip the location of Tract A, which is a landscape tract. But with this particular request, again, no impacts on the functioning of the area, and staff does recommend that the Board of County Commissioners approve the right-of-way abandonment requested and authorize the chairman to execute the abandonment resolution that's in your backup.
Thank you, Stan. Is there any questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open up the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Gentlemen.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Slurry, second from Commissioner Davis to approve staff recommendation. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Stan. Number 2 is a county-initiated request to redesignate plus or minus 70 acres from C2, Conservation 2, up to 1 unit per 40 acres, and L2, Low-Density Residential 2, up to 6 units per acre, to C1, Conservation 1, 0 density, and rezone those 70 plus or minus acres from RS6, Single Family Residential District, and RS1 to Con 1, Conservation 1 District, 0 density. This is, as the attorney mentioned, a legislative and quasi-judicial. It is a county-initiated request, so gentlemen, I'd like to ask you if you've had any conversations with yourself about this matter before us.
I did, and believe it or not, I was right.
Okay, very good, Commissioner. Anyone else have any conversations with themselves about this matter?
Just the ones we've had on the dais about it.
Okay, thank you.
Not that I recall, sir.
And gentlemen, can everyone listen to the evidence to be presented with a clear and open, impartial mind?
I can be open-minded.
As long as it's quick. There we go.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think with that, Stan, we've cleared the decks. At this point, if anyone wishes, do we need to swear them in? Or
I don't think we need to swear Mr. Bowling in. I think we'll be fine with that.
okay. Stan, floor is yours again.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, this involves 70 acres in the south part of the county against the lagoon. And in 2005, this property was acquired, known as the Orchid Diamond Tract, and included some monies provided from a grant from Florida Communities Trust. And actually, one of the obligations the county has is to redesignate this property. It's bought and it's really restricted to conservation and passive recreational use only. But the county is required and has an obligation to amend the land use and the zoning in the area to zero density conservation, and that's what this application is about. The comprehensive plan was established in 1990 with major amendments in 98 and 2010. But individual amendments are received 4 times a year. This particular amendment came in and was initiated by the county in April 2013. In June of 2013, the P&Z recommended approval, and you all recommended that this amendment be transmitted to the state to really get the process rolling. You did that in August. There have been no objections from state and regional agencies, and essentially we're at the end of the process, having gone through the Planning and Zoning Commission, your transmittal hearing, transmitted to the state and regional agencies with no comments, and this is the adoption hearing. If you all adopt this, we'll transmit this action to the state and regional agencies for the essentially the final effective approval. This request involves approximately 70 acres located south of Oslo Road against the lagoon. You can see the parcels are bounded in white. There is an FDOT outfall ditch that runs east and west, but other than that, it's 70 contiguous acres. And from the land use and the zoning maps, you can see essentially it's a continuation of our publicly owned conservation lands that are in kind of the aqua, the light blue. Currently, the land use designation is for residential development and then restricted development in an estuarine wetland designation area. And the proposal is to essentially make all of that area around the Orchid Diamond Tract, including the Orchid Diamond Tract conservation. And the zoning maps essentially do the same thing. It will take away from the land use and zoning any development rights and reflect what's reality out there, which is conservation. There are criteria that have been analyzed with this request like any other comprehensive plan amendment, and all the criteria have been satisfied with respect to compatibility, impacts, and consistency with the comprehensive plan. Again, there's no increase in the land use intensity. In fact, there'll be a decrease in the intensity on the designation and the zoning that are proposed. There has been a substantial change in circumstances since the comprehensive plan designated this area for development, and that being that the properties in question have been purchased and are held by the public and purchased for conservation. So that's the change that warrants and justifies this amendment. Again, only limited passive recreational development would be allowed under the proposed designation, and this actually, in staff's opinion, enhances compatibility with surrounding land uses. And again, the environmental quality of the site will be preserved, so there are positive environmental effects with the proposed amendment and rezoning. Both staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the Board approve the future land use amendment and the rezoning by adopting the attached ordinances. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll open up the public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak to this matter? Mr. Johnson, please come down. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning. Bob Johnson, Carlwyn Subdivision. There's nothing in this provision which is going to preclude us from moving forward on the development of the Oslo boat ramp, is there?
Right. This land use and zoning designation has no effect on that.
And once this is conservation, who's going to maintain the conservation area?
You.
Right. The county is obligated to maintain conservation areas. A lot of times there are coordinated efforts, but essentially the county has had this property since 2005 and conducts and coordinates maintenance activities on the site.
So this is being maintained now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, please come up. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Michael Weiss, and I live very close to the area, 12th Place Southeast. And to me, it's very important that you make this, pass this because of the need for the conservation. You may not know, but we have a pair of breeding bald eagles living in this conservation zone, and I pass by twice a day to see them. And every year they have several offspring. And I think it's important that we maintain the conservation area, particularly since our national bird lives there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Weiss.
Yeah. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this? Okay, seeing none, we'll close.
Oh, we got one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Althea McKenzie, 245 16th Avenue. I had a question, because of course, in sitting in these meetings and trying to learn the process, this is a comprehensive land use amendment, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I understand. And the difference of this being done through the process that is being done, because according to the 4 pointers that Mr. Bowling put up, you can have a swap of land and et cetera, right? Was one of the components going back. I guess I'm trying to understand, what is the difference between what you're doing here and what should have been done for the West Gifford rezoning?
The main difference here is the county owns this property.
Okay.
And so basically we are taking away the densities, the entitlements to that based on the fact that the county owned it. Now in the event that the county purchased the West Gifford property, then we could do the same thing if we wanted to. The problem is we don't have willing sellers there like we did in this instance back during 2005 when we passed the bond referendums.
So if the community wanted to move with the light industrial, it would have to be a buyout of some sort in order to get that rezoning done?
I don't want to say it would have to, but that would be the easiest way not to be taken to court over, because then it would be a government taking. And then you have other...
Because it was interesting in the presentation, one of the things that Mr. Bowling said was that the original designation didn't fit the area. So therefore this is going to now fit the area. And I think in the original discussions, when we had started back in 2009, was to make sure that now that we're growing as a community, that things fit the area.
Are you talking about the Oslo area or the Gifford area?
No, I was talking about in 2009 when we started looking at heavy industrial in that area.
Okay. Right.
The instructions were to make sure that we go back and look to see if it fits.
Okay.
So it's interesting how you could take the same type of need, but it works here, but it doesn't work there. And I just wanted to make sure I understood what were the barriers.
The ownership of the property.
The ownership of the property.
We're not going to sue ourselves because we're downgrading the land use.
As a lesser use, there's no cost involved, and there's no expectation that we would be developing on property specifically, since we do have a couple of bald eagles residing on that property as well. It's the best use for that property.
Okay.
And there is no other owner involved.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure I understand the considerations.
Yeah,
all right.
that's
Well, thank you very much.
That's the biggest change, is the ownership.
Is the ownership of the property
Yes.
makes a difference. All right. We'll see.
Dylan, did you have anything to add to that, or that covered?
I was just going to follow up on what Commissioner Davis said, which was we're the owner, and on top of that, exactly what the commission followed up on, which was the ownership is the key. Any owner can come to us and petition to change their property's either land use designation or their zoning. What happened in the West Gifford issue, as Commissioner Davis pointed out, was that was not the property owner of the property who was requesting changes. It was the neighborhood requesting changes. And when that typically happens, that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of meetings. I can say from my experience in Jacksonville, in the Riverside-Avondale area, there was a desire for the community to change some of the zoning restrictions in that area. And again, because it wasn't owned by one particular person making that requested change, it took a lot of time and a lot of meetings and several years to work through that process. So I just want to clarify on the issues raised by the board.
Thank you, Dylan. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak to this matter? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Gentlemen, your pleasure.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Solari for staff recommendation. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Stan.
Thank you, Stan. Moving to public discussion items.
Mr. Chairman.
Just want to clarify with the clerk, so that was the motion on for both the resolution or the ordinance for the land use and for the zoning. Just want to make sure that was clear for our clerk.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that'll work. Thank you, Dylan. Public discussion items, a request to speak from Thomas Gruber regarding high-speed railroad. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Go ahead and give us your name and address for the record.
Tom Gruber, 221 Park Shores Circle, Indian River Shores. First of all, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to come and address the Commission this morning. First of all, let me start with saying who am I? I'm an electrical engineer with an advanced degree, and I have 6 years' experience with a hornless rail project, first as a volunteer for the town of Cohasset in Massachusetts to chair the mitigation committee during the environmental and Section 106 hearings. and later in a paid position during the 3-year construction period of that rail system. So I have significant first-hand experience in dealing with the rules and regulations of a hornless rail system. However, I might mention that the project we dealt with was a little bit different from what you're going to be dealing with here. First, it wasn't a high-speed rail system. Nothing in New England can be high speed with the curves and all that sort of thing. So our max speed was about 50 miles an hour. Second, it was a government project, not a private project. The project was done by Massachusetts Bay Authority, Transportation Authority, so the quasi-government organization. And third, the environmental impact statement was written by the MBTA's consultant as opposed to the FRA, which is usually the case. I don't understand quite why, to be honest with you. However, from what I can see, the project differences, in fact, are not necessarily very great. Almost everyone in the county seems to be aware there's a new high-speed rail project proposed for Florida to connect the Orlando airport to the Miami area. Further, it's proposed there be no stops between Orlando and southern Florida. Thus, Indian River County will receive no benefit from the rail project while being exposed to suffer the consequence and inconvenience of 32 additional trains passing through our county at a very high rate of speed. In order to somewhat compensate for the large increase of rail traffic, the topic of a hornless system has been brought up in conversation in the press, in the press, since it would no longer expose the residents and businesses to very loud warning horns. A hornless system requires very different grade crossing designs to protect the public. One of the new crossing designs that we've heard about are quad gate crossings. And a quad gate is very simply a crossing where there are 2 gates on either side of the tracks to totally block traffic. Quad gates tend to be very expensive, and I've heard all kinds of numbers bandied about the cost of them and who must pay for them. But there are other schemes that can be utilized for a hornless system, although not too many people are talking about them. The most common being what's called a channelized crossing. And in a channelized crossing, picture an ordinary 2-way traffic railroad crossing with only a gate that would stop the vehicles entering the crossing. There is no gate for the vehicles leaving the crossing. But the entering lanes have a channel or a median that will not allow the cars to go around the gates and thwart the gates. So essentially, once you're in the channel, you become locked, and no longer is there an issue of somebody driving around the gate. And quite frankly, in our town, we had 9 crossings, 2 of which are private single lanes, so let's discount those. We only have 1 quad gate, and the balance are channelized crossings.
Were those cheaper?
Pardon?
Were those less expensive?
Significantly.
Yeah.
Significantly.
Less moving parts?
Yeah. I mean, the cost is essentially the same as a regular crossing with the cost of a barrier strip. And our barrier strips were granite curbed things about 3 feet wide with plantings in the center. And they had to be, I think they were 9 or 10 inches high to make sure that somebody in a Hummer couldn't go over them or would regret it. Right. Of course, up north we use granite crossings, which are not friendly to tires to start with. They're very sharp edges. So the upshot is the cost of crossings for a hornless system might be less costly than some of the previously estimated costs. Also, regardless of who pays for a hornless railroad crossing within their city limits, the city is responsible for applying for a hornless permit. Not too many people know that from the FRA. The actual design of each crossing in the town will be scored by the FRA by way of a safety evaluation process. A hornless permit will be granted or denied based on that evaluation. Hornless permits must be renewed periodically by the town. I think it's every 5 years, but I'm not positive about that. In my opinion, hornless crossings must also be designed in cooperation with the railroad due to the detailed tie-ins required between the crossing communications and the signaling systems. Some of our, we have one quad gate crossing where there was insufficient length for medians, and so they had to go to extraordinary techniques. They had to put a metal detector in the center of the track so that if a car got pinned in between the two gates, the control system would know it and would be able to stop the train. They also had to put 24-hour video surveillance on that crossing. So there are other things you can do if, in fact, you can't meet the rules straight ahead. If you'd like to read the rules for hornless crossings, see the 103-page 49 Code of Federal Regulations, Parts 222 and 229, called The Use of Locomotive Horns at Highway Rail Grade Crossings, Interim Final Rule 218-2003. And I think we were one of the very first systems that was installed to that rule, because our system began construction in 2004 and went commercial in 2007. So the designs were done shortly after this rule was promulgated. Now let's get back to basics. I hope I'm not taking too much time here. I think I have some important things to say. I think the county needs to take a step back for a minute and look at the overall situation. The railroad company has a mission to build the railroad as fast as it can at the lowest possible cost so it can begin revenue service. And we have the same situation. As you may have seen, any requests that don't fit within these parameters are summarily dismissed. This is not intended to be a criticism of the railroad's methods of operation. It's just a fact. The county has a mission to do the best job it can to protect its citizens, minimize the impacts on residents' quality of life, while doing the best job to provide for their safety. Therefore, the railroad's mission and the county's mission are not necessarily the same. So how can some of these differences be resolved? Or to put it another way, how can the county obtain mitigation that they feel is important but is being denied by the railroad? The answer lies in the railroad's environmental permitting process. The FRA is generating a draft EIS, which is Environmental Impact Statement, which is in compliance with the NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act, for this project. What must an EIS address? And this I quote from the railroad's website. NEPA is a decision-making process that requires federal agencies to consider the impacts of actions on the human and natural environment and to disclose such impacts in a public document. I'm continuing the quote. Over 30 categories are evaluated, including the potential impacts to economic and social environments, cultural resources, environmental justice, noise, vibration, air and water quality, protected species, and essential habitats, end quotes. And there's actually more things they consider than that, but that's a brief summary. In addition, there's a Section 106 permit, which requires that all railroad projects' impacts on historic resources must be identified and mitigated if necessary. And this is a separate set of hearings. Ours was administered by the Army Corps of Engineers and involved 22 separate meetings at the Army Corps. Note, this applies not only to the registered historic buildings and sites, but also all eligible historic sites. In other words, if a site meets the criteria for registration in the National Register but has not been registered, it must be considered for the purposes of mitigation. Immediate sites of historic concern, this is just in Vero, for example, might be the old train station, the Vero Man site, and the diesel generating plant, all of which I believe are on the National Register. The town historic preservation commissions, the local historical societies, and the Florida State Historic Preservation Officer are all important resources in defining these sites and the mitigation they feel is appropriate. And just as a quick comment, when the MBTA did their historic site evaluation, we felt it was very inadequate. So we hired a historic preservation consultant who essentially doubled the number of sites that the MBTA found. So our inventory doubled from what they were willing to consider. In addition, the EIS must present reasons why this project should be constructed at all when compared with the no-build option or other project options, which is interesting. The upshot of all this is that the EIS process is the final court, court in quotes, which benefits of the rail project. The benefits of the rail project are weighed against all of the impacts, and the necessary mitigation is determined. This is a vitally important process to any town or county which will be impacted by the rail project. The railroad on their website has set down a schedule for the EIS. The first scoping meetings were held in May of 2013. The draft was due in September of 2013, and obviously they're a little bit behind schedule because that hasn't been released. And the final EIS approval was scheduled for April of 2014, which clearly we're far from. As can be seen, the project is already 4 to 5 months behind the schedule for the draft EIS. Not until the draft EIS becomes a public document will anyone really know the details of the railroad's proposed design. From this point, the city or county will be able to see the design details and be able to determine the impacts and what additional mitigation measures they feel are necessary for the county. So what can Indian River County do? If you have crossings under your jurisdiction, I'm not sure about that, I think there might be some, and want to consider hornless crossings, do at least preliminary scoping on crossing designs for a hornless system, with major consideration to defining the reasons that Indian River County needs a hornless system. If that's important to you, it may not be important. You also want to provide communication with towns within the county who desire hornless crossings. After the draft EIS is published, study the design and the rationale for the design in detail. Determine specific parts of the design that will need to be changed, in your opinion, to protect the citizens of Indian River County, along with facts and figures. And by that I mean hard data. You can't go in and say, well, I don't like this. You've got to have facts and numbers which justify any requested changes. Participate very actively in the EIS and Section 106 hearings with the goal of improving the project on behalf of the citizens. Given sufficient hard data and facts, some of the things that could possibly be considered in the EIS hearings are: 1, additional noise mitigation; 2, adequate fencing. That's an issue I've heard a lot of people talk about. And in fact, we made a number of changes to the fencing along our railroad project as a result of Section 106 hearings. Also, I think it's possible that you could ask for a hornless system as mitigation. Everybody right now is saying no, but I can tell you in our project up north, all the hornless improvements were paid for by the MBTA and installed and maintained by them. And a station stop on the Treasure Coast, which is probably the biggest one. This would seem to be tough, but I believe a strong business case can be made for a mid-coast stop to feed tourists to this area and resources such as hotels, beaches, Dodgertown complex, as well as facilities in towns and other towns in the county. It would also be give a convenient public transportation option for travel between the Treasure Coast and the major airports of Orlando and West Palm. A single stop for at least some trains would delay the train very little, but could pay massive dividends to the tourist-related businesses in the area and could generate much financial benefit to the Treasure Coast. If this is deemed necessary, work must be done to develop the business case for a Treasure Coast stop so that it can be woven into the railroad's business case. There are approximately 13 towns between Cocoa and West Palm Beach. This means that one town or one county is in a minority. Coalescences among counties and towns become very important to add weight to the arguments during the Section 106 and EIS hearings. I would strongly encourage Indian River County to solicit cooperation of other towns and counties and work with them for a unified cause on as many mitigation items as possible. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Commissioner Fletcher and Commissioner Davis?
Mr. Groom, thank you so much for bringing this forward. I wanted to know if you had any correspondence with All Aboard Florida regarding your
Not directly with, I've attended most but not all of the City of Vero Beach hearings of their commission. And I've had some correspondence with Kim Delaney from the planning office, who seems to be involved in this. And the thing that I'm really questioning, quite frankly, is that people seem to say that the railroad is saying that it's impossible for them to pay for hornless improvements. And from my experience, I don't think that's the case.
The reference you made earlier that the hornless system is available, is that on the Uniform Commercial Code? And do you have a section for that?
It has nothing to do with it's an FRA.
It's FRA?
The rule that I quoted, 103 pages of delightful bedtime reading.
Well, I look forward to reading it.
I have a copy of my comments that I'll leave with the clerk if you'd like to include those in the minutes.
That'd be great.
That would be great.
Commissioner
Thank
Davis?
you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I had the opportunity to speak to Ms. Olska Forbes Sunday in Publix while I was doing some grocery shopping. And I really, she brought forth some pretty good thoughts. And, of course, the City of Vero Beach already has a committee that's looking into this. And I think that probably the best place to address this is not necessarily at a county commission meeting here today, but at the MPO meetings. And almost as we move forward for the next several months is to perhaps request the City of Vero Beach's committee regarding these crossings and what the direction that they're going to go, maybe to give us an update on it, because I think a lot of things that Mr. Gruber had mentioned, we could work into that process and not reinvent the wheel as far as another committee. Because I think what's going to be good for the City of Vero Beach quite possibly could be good for the entire county and in its municipalities, much as mentioned. And, of course, with the MPO having individuals from all branches of the different municipal governments, it gets that coordinated effort, just as you mentioned. So,
there is strength in working together. We found that up north, that this particular rail project went through 5 towns. And 3 of the 5 towns worked very, very closely together. And I think that really had a major impact in these hearings on the quality of mitigation that we were able to receive. And there's a point I'd like to make clear, and that is that I am neither pro nor against any project like this. I was not up north, and I'm not here. I only want to see the best possible deal for the residents who are going to have to experience this project once it's up and running.
And I guess, Mr. Chairman, ultimately where I'm going with this would be probably to add that as an item on the agenda for the MPO for the next, until we get this issue resolved, if the committee would be willing to give us an update of their findings.
I think we can certainly make that request.
Yes, and along similar lines, but not exactly the same path that you had mentioned. I think it was a week and a half ago or so. I met with MPO staff Phil Madsen, Chris Mora, and I believe Stan Bowling, where I printed aerials of each of the 32 crossings, created a map where you can look at what are the conditions at each, what are conditions that the MPO might want to bring up to some of the municipal crossings as a, not telling them what to do, but maybe coordinating them, making them aware of certain conditions. So we've done a little bit of work in that area, but I think it could go further with some of the items that you brought up today. And the MPO, I know the agenda is not out for next Wednesday's meeting, and whether it's that one or the following one, but to bring up some more I think strength in numbers is always good, so if we can somewhat band together under the umbrella of the MPO would be better.
Commissioner Fletcher.
And aside from that, let's maintain the line with the MPO. I posed some serious questions with Rusty Roberts, who had come back to the MPO to give us an update, and specifically the crossing most of all of our concern would be the one that's so close to the Gifford Middle School for public safety, and we also talked about some further enhancement improvements. Rusty said he'd go back to the board and bring that back, so we anticipate him coming back as well. So if we have your information, other than coming to the meeting and getting this together, as Commissioner Davis recommended, I'd like to invite you when Rusty Roberts comes down too. This way we can enhance that communication.
My only comment is I'm a winter resident, and I'll be leaving at the end of April.
Well, you can fix that, though.
I'm a winter resident, too.
But I'm
summer and spring and rest.
Well, maybe we can accelerate Rusty's visit.
But I would be pleased to provide any input that you folks would like.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sawyer, do you have any comments or questions?
thank you.
Okay. Mr. Green, another question I have. Are you familiar with sealed corridors?
Sealed corridors.
Right. It's my understanding that north of Palm Beach County, the section of track that all aboard Florida will be running through, and to get the speeds they want, I think it's called a level 7, and to get the speeds they have to do what's called a sealed corridor. And unfortunately, nowhere in the FRA regs do they actually define what a sealed corridor is. We have heard rumblings that potentially what they have to do to get a sealed corridor may be enough to actually satisfy the hornless improvements as well. So are you familiar with that at all?
I'm not familiar with the term.
Okay.
I can speculate as to what it is. It would be I think it's probably a seriously fenced right-of-way with no grade crossings, either underpasses or overpasses.
I'd agree with that.
And I think in reading the FRA, and I don't have that particular 180-page one, but I have a 210 one that's a rail crossings for speeds under and over 110. Mm-hmm. And I think that corridor is going to be in place from I-95 to the airport where it exceeds the 110, and that's where any place they want to go greater than 110, there's a whole other layer of safety and barrier requirements, because you don't want not just a person or a car, you don't want anything on the track when you're going that fast.
Yeah, even hogs.
Yeah.
Hog fence? A lot of deer and turkey.
Big problem at the airport.
Well, Mr. Brewer, we're going to ask maybe either Phil Mattson or Chris Moore to get a hold of you and see if we can invite you to one of those MPO meetings.
All right.
And coordinate that with you. And we greatly appreciate you coming forward and offering your experience and information.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Have a good day. Item 2 under public discussion items is a request to speak from Gifford Economic Development regarding follow-up on Gifford issues. Good morning, Reverend Mosley.
Good morning, gentlemen. Did you all enjoy your 2-week vacation?
Well, we're always working. Wasn't really a vacation.
Okay. Well, great. Praise the Lord. I've come before you again to just do a little follow-up and another interesting article that we came across, and it's about the 10 states where income equality has soared. The source is ThinkStock. Although the average real income in the United States has increased by more than a third between 1979 and 2007, not all workers benefited equally. In 50 states, income growth among the top 1% earners rapidly outpaced that of the bottom 99%, according to the recent study. In 4 states, Alaska, Michigan, Nevada, and Wyoming, the average income increased exclusively for the top 1% and declined for the bottom 99%. In another 6 states, the top 100% accounted for more than 2/3 of all income growth between 1979 and 2007, while the income of the bottom 99% grew at a much slower pace, based on the report published by the Economic Policy Institute, the EPI. 24/7 Wall Street reviewed the 10 states with the most lopsided income growth. In many of the states, while the most lopsided income growth, the real average income rose little, if at all. Between 1979 and 2007, the average income of the bottom 99% rose 19% nationwide. It rose less than 5% in 8 of these states. In an interview with 24/7 Wall Street, Mark Price, co-author of the study and a labor economist with the Keystone Research Center, said that many observers of the issue of income inequality in a story about the Wall Street's growth. It's just not a story of financial markets in New York City, Price said. Over time, that top group, the 1%, in each state is accruing an increasingly larger share of the growth income. In fact, as of 2012, the financial sector comprised a larger share of the economy than in the United States, overall only of 3 of the 10 states, with the most imbalanced income growth. Additionally, the financial sector contributed among the least in 4 of these states. The financial industry accounted for just 2.3% of gross domestic product in Wyoming in 2012, the lowest share of any state. Another factor that does not appear related or to uneven gains in income is economic growth. Price told 24/7 Wall Street, looking at growth in the GDP over time is a pretty blunt instrument, and the relationship between an unbalanced income gains and economic growth is weak. GDP growth was the largest in Nevada, Arizona, and Florida between 1979 and 2007. Among the 10 states with the most imbalanced income growth, however, among the remaining 7 states also was Alaska, Michigan, and, for example, where GDP growth lagged much of the rest of the nation. State tax structures, too, may not play a large role, as many observers may believe. Price noted that for most Americans, the decision where to live was not tied to taxes. While 3 states with the most uneven growth did not levy an income tax, 3 of the other 10 states, Hawaii, New York, and Oregon, had exceptionally high income tax rates. However, Professor Richard Burkhauser and Sarah Gibson Blanding, professor of policy analysis at Cornell University, added that taxes and transfer payments should be not ignored. In an email to 24/7 Wall Street, Burkhauser, who has argued against the significance of income equality, government tax transfer policies can dramatically redistribute income from those who have large amounts of taxable market income to those who not. Still, according to Price, inequality in income growth is a trend which should concern policymakers independent of the impact of taxes and transfers, and that income net of such consideration have disproportionately risen for the wealthiest 1%. To determine the 10 states with the most skewed growth in incomes, 24/7 Wall Street reviewed income growth figures from 1979 to 2007 from the increasingly unequal states of America. A study by Estelle Samiler and Mark Price, published by the EPI. We also reviewed figures from 2009 to 2011, the same study. The authors derived that the average income growth from taxable income data, net of inflation, and additionally, we reviewed state GDP figures from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, unemployment data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and assortment of figures from the U.S. Census Bureau from the 2012 Community Survey. And I'm not going to go through all 10 states, but I'd like to point out number 9, which is Florida. Share of growth captured by the 1%, is 68.9%. Real income growth from 1979 to 2007, 38.8%, which is the 16th highest. Real income growth from the bottom 99% is 13.8%, 18th least. Income growth for the top 100%, 218.8%, the 17th highest. Florida top 1% captured 68.9% of the state's average income increase between 1979 and 2007. The divide between the wealthiest percentile and the rest of the population grew wider between 2009 and 2011. And we were supposed to be in a depression. Interesting. As the income of the top earners rose by 9.2%, while the income of the bottom 99% barely grew at all. The state's top 100% earned an average of $1.14 million in 2011, while the bottom 99% earned an average of just $35,393 that year. Further increasing the divide between the wealthy and the rest of the state could be the loss of jobs in Florida since 2008, especially in the construction industry. With all that in mind, some things that came to our attention as we reviewed the budget. And we addressed the letter to the commission, which I will submit after I go through these topics. And these are some of the things that concerned us as we perused the budget. And this is a letter to the commissioners. we find that one of the most important things that's impacting our community and our environment is communication. This is the number one problem that right now I see that has been occurring, and that's why this is one reason why we have a tendency not to understand what is going on and why certain decisions were made. And I feel that we have to address this issue of communication, gentlemen. It's a very serious problem, and again, it's a cause for alarm because of the many misunderstandings between the commissioners, community, and other groups that are working with the county commission. Information is not being disseminated, especially very important and vital information that pertains to our everyday livelihood as well as our economic development in our community as well as our social economic status. Communication is very important, and right now this seems to be a problem because one of the things that as we have talked to various residents of the Wabasso, the Gifford area, is lack of communication, and they're not understanding why things are happening around them and why certain decisions are made. And we are finding out after the facts of various meetings that we feel that were vital to our community interests that we were not either informed in a timely fashion or after the fact. So, we would really love to find a way to, amend this issue so that appropriate means, because just to give you an example, if you were to get a divorce, now, according to the courts, you would have to exhaust all resources or means of communication to get the information out. Newspaper, radio, posting on the internet.
For a divorce?
Yes, if your spouse is not available to be served.
Radio?
Yes, if that's the one means, because what we're looking at is means of communicating with individuals, especially things that are vital, because different people have various avenues, especially based on their socioeconomic status. Okay?
I think that
public service announcements, when I say radio.
I could hear this already. Commissioner Davis is getting a divorce, so I just figured we'd advertise this on the PSA, brought to you by Mosley's Kitchen.
Say, if anybody's seen my spouse, I'm looking to get divorced. Can you find a letter or notify him or her that we're getting divorced? I mean, these are some of the things that we have to begin to exhaust.
Leslie, let me just ask you this to get this along here. At the last meeting, I think we asked you to submit some of your questions in writing to the county administrator. I know that an email went out to you reminding you of that.
Yes.
And then subsequently, I think we sent an email because we hadn't heard from you with the written request, and we tried to anticipate what your questions were. So, it goes two ways. Okay. I mean, you're asking us for communication. Well, we directly asked you for those questions in writing so we could respond and improve the communication. And as yet, I don't know if we've ever received that yet.
Well, we have them here. We have the questions here.
And it works better if we have that in advance of a meeting so that staff can work on the questions you have and we can provide you answers. But to kind of just show up here and say, here it is, without us having a chance to evaluate and work on it is not real effective communication.
No problem.
So, also, you've asked for the extensive business plan. You keep saying you're going to bring to my office?
If you are, sir.
Okay.
We're addressing communication. Okay. This is our outline, and you can understand our program.
Is that your extensive one? You said you had a big, extensive one.
Oh. Okay, Mr. Mosley, just to be clear, I've seen that too and read that, and it's not a business plan, which Mr.
It's an outline of what our projects are.
Yeah, but it's not a business plan, and it's not anything useful that helps really to improve the dialogue.
I understand that.
Okay, just wanted to be
clear.
That
will be forthcoming again when we submit the budget by May 1st. We will have the details because, again, you requested a budget.
No, I thought you said you had one and that you were going to bring it to my office.
Well, that is what we're giving you an outline showing that the programs that we're instituting. And if you look at the layout, the flow chart on the right-hand side, on the left column, it gives you an idea of the breakdown of the various programs that we feel that will create a change in our economic status in our community. Those are the various programs.
This is not a business plan. I don't mean.
I do understand. I know what a business plan is.
Well, you said you had one. I just was wondering because I asked. You said 2 months ago you were dropping off in my office, and I just.
Well, I don't recall that. I recall telling you about the outline of our program, and these are some of the things that we feel that are vital to change basically the direction of the growth of our community. That seems to be a problem. All the things that, if we go back to the Gifford Neighborhood Plan back in 2007, you'll notice that those things that were instituted basically concurred or basically extended poverty in our area. Those things that were not done, the things that we're supposed to go out and seek and encourage individuals to start businesses, doing the minority business loan, revolving loan program, those things would have brought us out of poverty. Those things were not implemented in the Gifford Neighborhood Plan.
Well, you have to apply. We wrote you a letter explaining that you have to apply for that. We can't apply for you. You have to physically fill out the application, and that's how you get it. And we sent you a letter explaining that, and you haven't filled out the application, so therefore you couldn't get those loans through that program.
Well, we understand that, but we just got that information Friday. Our committee is still reviewing this.
Well, you're the one that brought it to our attention, the program.
That is correct.
And so we assumed that you knew you knew that you had to apply for it. I mean, it takes an application to get that state funding.
Again, through our organization, apparently the task force was basically charged with that responsibility of applying for that because you have to have a agency.
No, the individual has to apply. The organization that wants the money, like your organization, would have to apply to that program.
Mm-hmm. So the remaining $350,000 that the county has set aside for that particular program, matching the funds.
No, it's not the county. It's the state. It's a state program that you have to apply for. And we explained it to you in writing.
Sir, we understand that. But what I'm saying, at that particular time, the county commission had proposed that they would match funding from the minority black business in Palm Beach of $350,000, and you would match that money with $350,000 from Indian River County.
The $350,000 from it was SHIP funds for SHIP projects. The $350,000 program is for loans from minority businesses. You're confusing the two. Sir, we put $350,000 up for SHIP funds.
This was supposed to be for the revolving business loan, the $700,000, because you were supposed to match that amount of funds. No. The matching funds from the minority business fund was to put up $350,000. And the River County said they will match it, which would create a total pool of $700,000 for revolving business loans.
Okay. William Rosen, you have Jason direct a response to this, please.
For the record, Jason Brown, County Budget Director. The information that you provided to me back in November, December timeframe, I'm just going to read from it what it says. I think that's the simplest thing to do. It says black minority. This was from the Workforce Task Force.
Correct.
Black minority business funds are now pooled with Palm Beach County. Recommend the County Commission request a separate reporting of these monies to help local minority businesses to gain access to these funds. So that goes to what Joe's saying. This is a program run by the Department of Economic Opportunity by the state of Florida. There are local offices throughout the state. Our area is covered by the Palm Beach office. So what was requested by the task force was a reporting of what was happening to help the local businesses gain access to that. And part of that is the local businesses apply to that directly. It's a program run by the state. It's not run by the county. I don't see anything in the documentation that you provided or in my research that showed that there was some matching funds pledged by the county. If there is something, I'd like to see that, but that was not in the Workforce Task Force report. It was not in the Gifford Neighborhood Plan that was adopted in 2002. So I don't know where that's coming from. But basically, that is a state-run program. The request was for an accounting of where the funds were going.
Well, sir, I sat on the task force back in 2000.
That's correct.
And we were the ones to make that recommendation. And that's why, we basically, I'm one of the authors of that study. And I know that was the intent of the program.
But it says nothing about matching funds in the report. There's nothing here.
It's the 350 from Palm Beach, and this is Indian River County would match that for 350, which would come to a total of 700,000.
Doesn't say it here.
Okay. Well, we'll get back. Okay, we will table that to the next discussion, and I will find that original documentation from the meetings from back in 2000.
Okay.
And show the original.
Thank you. And Reverend Mosley, we'll take the written questions you submitted today.
Okay.
I'll
Can I
ask
just
staff to
go through a copy of a couple of these? Because one of the things that really concerned us, and I will just briefly go through them, and if you will get back with me, procurement and training. Now, you did have a seminar. Briefly, we found out about it, again, like I say, after the fact. We feel this is very vital, and this is something that really needs to, we request that training, because many businesses in Gifford can partake of this procurement process. Now, I just came from a workshop at Harris Corporation, and to my understanding, you being a state or a federal, state or county facility, you don't own anything. You purchase everything from ink pens to paper, napkins, and everything. Now, the state of Florida want to do business with all businesses. They also have a minority set aside. They also have various agreements that if you utilize state services or state contracts or grants, that part of those set-asides are included. Now, I would like, and I was perusing the budget, and, I haven't seen, one of the things that concern us is the beautification of Gifford, of 43rd Street, 45th Street. And one of the things we're concerned about is that, again, there was no notice, again, we're not using all channels that are available to us to advertise, because we know we have landscapers, we have other businesses that could at least bid on part of some of those contracts that are going out, many things. We have not, when I looked at the budget, I haven't seen where we have an MBE program, a Minority Business Enterprise program, first of all. Secondly, we are in the affected area. We do have legal, various businesses that could actually do business with the county, and I haven't seen where any information has gone out to advertise to our community to allow us to bid on various projects. Mainly, like I said, we're looking at the 45th Street, $350,000 or $375,000 that is available, and that would be, a boost to our economy for us to get part of that money that's being used in our community. So these are some of the things that we would like for the county to come back again. You held the workshop. But guess what? Many of the individuals didn't find out about it till basically after the fact. So if we could ask the county to bring the opportunity for those procurement workshops, work with the community in terms of training various individuals, let them know what's available through the county that they can bid on, so that we can now, at least get a return on some of our investment by being taxpayers. Because I know the county procure everything from napkins, paper towels, paper clips. This will give us an incentive to start and create businesses to do business with the county.
Reverend Mosley, as you referred to, on February 20th, our purchasing department was part of a workshop that was coordinated by the Chamber of Commerce in coordination with the Enterprise Zone. Mm-hmm. Our purchasing manager was there. The purchasing person from the school district was there, and it was kind of an orientation specifically aimed at the Gifford area of this is how you do business. This is how you would be a prospective bidder with the county or the school board. So I think we are taking those actions.
Okay. Now, how many people showed up? Very few, because they were not made aware. I had planned on attending. First time I had heard about it was at the county commission meeting on Tuesday, which they were saying on Thursday. I didn't have adequate time to plan this into my schedule. So what we're asking is that we bring this back. Because this is something we feel is very important to our community. And we are interested because this will help us grow.
Reverend Mosley, it was a publicly noticed meeting. Jason, what form of notice was made?
It was announced on our website. The Chamber of Commerce did various outreach methodologies,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Here we go with communication again.
And I believe it was discussed at a Gifford meeting as well. And just for the record, when you mention about communication, I don't think there's a commissioner up here that has not been at least one, if not a half a dozen meetings in the Gifford community regarding some of the various topics that you've discussed, as well as the county administrator, the county attorney, and a plethora of, and a league of many of our staff members through working through the Gifford Neighborhood Plan, and the amount of outreach in discussion with the enterprise zone and other factors that are specifically designed and engineered to promote good business in the community have been done, and the public should know that nobody here is a stranger to the environment and the communication process, and have been invited. There was some times where you may perhaps did not want to hear the information, and again, I want to acquiesce when you said, show me the money, and I said, we don't dole out the money. What we do is we educate and bring awareness as to opportunities, and I don't believe that was the message you wanted to hear. But for the record, I want to ensure to the public that there's not a commissioner that's on this dais that has not been in an outreach mode to the Gifford community, specifically in conversating with you and many of the individuals who are seeking assistance. Thank you.
Okay, now, second.
Reverend, just let me have Commissioner Flory here real quick, please.
I just want to go back to the communication issue and stress the fact that we cannot take every available means to communicate to the world about what we're doing. That's an incredibly expensive endeavor that wastes a lot of resources. What we've done in the past with people who are interested, particularly from people with Gifford, is to just ask, tell us what your interest is, we'll put you on the appropriate email list and convey that to you. That seems to have worked very well for some areas of Gifford. And that's what I'd ask you to do is simply the same thing. Let the county know what areas you're interested in, and we'll get you and others on the email list. But you all need to take the initiative to let us know that. We're not in the business of trying to make sure that every citizen knows every single thing that we do. However, we've been incredibly communicative with those citizens who've asked us for specific items. If we try to push out every single thing to every single individual, you just get information overload. And it'd end up like the medical boxes with 28 pages of facts and figures, which immediately tossed into the trash can. So, if you feel that the communication isn't enough, then you ought to develop a program, and we'll work with you to implement it. But to just come up and complain, I don't think gets to the heart of the matter. Again, when we had other areas of Gifford that came before us and asked for more communication, we worked out something which over the last 3 years seems to have worked very well, because we haven't heard, no, with those people, Ms. Scott, with those people. So that is the tact, I think, which would be a lot more useful and helpful for both sides of this.
Okay, you yourself, and I'm glad you brought that up, because you found a different point of view when you came to our store and you talked to the grassroots. You found things out that, again, when you went to the Youth Activity Center, that you didn't know. Those people had a different point of view. Many of them don't frequent the Youth Activity Center or GYEC. They live in the core of the community. Many of them, their socioeconomic status, don't travel far within 2.5 miles of their area. So what we're saying is that the core of the information is not coming to the core of the community. You're bringing it out there. Many of them, again, like I said,
that has nothing to do with
hold on, let me finish. You found out that they mentioned to you that they have no confidence in various groups out there where you're bringing the information. So they don't frequent those areas. They don't frequent those meetings because they feel that, again, those groups have let them down in so many different ways. When you came there, they gave you their point of view and you found out what they were thinking. And that was a good thing, and that's why I invited you back. We're not talking about driving through. We can walk around. Within 2.5 miles area, you have the bulk of the residents, the core of the community there. Those are the people who are suffering. Individuals when we were talking about GYC, that's on the outskirts of the core of the community. These individuals are concerned. That's why they came to me. That's why, they're pleading their case. And they're not understanding why these things are happening. Even though, you say, yes, they're having meetings at the GYC. They're having meetings here. And, again, the information is not being disseminated in a timely manner. When we found out about various meetings, we had maybe a day notice. If this information was disseminated maybe a week or 2 weeks ahead of time, then these individuals have time to plan. I would like to have time to plan in my schedule. Again, the procurement meeting, I would have loved to have been there. But I only found out about it at the county commission meeting, which is that Tuesday, and it was being held that Thursday. I have other things on my schedule, and I missed it. And then, when it finally, 6 o'clock, bam, I realized, it was something I was supposed to be. And I would have loved to put that on my itinerary. If I've been given it a week ahead of time, I put it in my phone would have given me an alarm, I would have known about it. So these are some of the things that we're asking that, okay, we do have a communication problem with the core residents and other groups in the community. This is why I'm asking that we take a look. And we'll look at maybe some suggestions of finding a way to fine-tune this communication process, because the information is not getting to the core residents. Those are the people who are affected. And that's what we're talking about. The core residents of Gifford.
I'd like to point out,
those are the ones that are in the dark.
The procurement, there was 15 businesses from Gifford that attended that procurement session. I just checked on that, and there was 15 businesses.
That could have been more.
No, always can be more. Reverend Mosley, I've called you, I've tried to communicate. You've never returned my call.
Sir,
I don't know what to do. I mean, I try everything.
Look, I don't have a call from you.
And you knew on Tuesday that we were having that. Like you said, you should have put it in your phone right then, and then you wouldn't have forgotten it.
Sir, I'm working on a lot of things right now for the community. Again, I've even worked with, as the gentleman was talking about high-speed rail, just this past week, I've talked with, her name is Ali Solil, over the high-speed network. Those are some of the things that we're looking at. We're talking to individuals all over the country trying to find ways to improve our community. I am. And so I do have a lot on my plate, as well as trying to work on a family business and other products. So I have a lot on my plate. And again, like I said, I'm listening. The community is asking, that the methods that you're using now are not reaching them. So we're asking to work with you to find a way that we can better communicate. That's what we're asking. Because it is vital, gentlemen. This is why we have a lot of misunderstanding. And that's why I'm here today, because of the misunderstandings. They're not getting the message. We're not finding out how, various information. Like I said, and some people feel that there's an attempt that they use certain methods to communicate, and that's why people don't show up or not hearing the information. Maybe they should put it out as a form of token, said that they did it, but guess what? The core people that are affected are not getting the message.
Okay. So Reverend Mosley, we did get your list here, so we can respond to that. Okay. So that's a step positive. If you have specific recommendations of how we can reach and communicate with some of the core community, could you please submit them in writing to us, and we will certainly be glad to try to look at that and see what we can do to help. Okay?
Yes.
As Commissioner Fletcher said, I don't think anyone here has not wanted to try to help, but one way that we communicate better is in writing, so that we have staff to look at it, we can have information generated to communicate back to you, and there's no misunderstanding. It's written down, and so we will be glad to continue working with you. And but if you could send us your recommendation of how to improve the communication, we'd be glad to take a look at it.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, having said that, I will tell you right now, you might want to stick around for one of the matters under the county attorney's office. It's a water tax rate break for the residents of the city of Sebastian. That's not being afforded to the residents of the Gifford community. Mm-hmm. And so you might want to stay here for that portion of the meeting so you can be aware of what's going on, because one of the proposals to make up for that tax break for Sebastian is to increase everybody's property taxes. So you might want to stick around and be part of that conversation.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, you want to go first?
Well,
Okay, with that,
Now we got.
Excuse me, I'm still up. Why do you always want to close me out? I'm Wanda Scott of 4306 26th Avenue. My company is Gifford Marketing Firm, and I'm also part of Mosley Family Groceries. And not to beat a dead horse, but I am a marketing company. I do distribute. I put information in the Treasure Coast Chronicles. Nobody's contacted me. You have my email address. I am very familiar with all of you, very friendly with all of you. So even myself is being left out the loop. We're not going to beat a dead horse about communication, but I am a company. I'm a company that's 7 years old. I'm not a company that just, well, actually going on 8 years old. So I can be that vessel. Call me. And I'll come by and stop in your office. But anyway, what I'm here today about, the alarm was sound about our community. And I, at this point, feel like it's sort of going on deaf ear. I don't see the response, the quick action. There is an alarm. Right now, the average person in not Indian River County, but Gifford, Walbasso, when we look at income, 14 to 23,000, according to the federal guidelines. If it's a family of 4 or 5, we're looking at 200 to 300% below the poverty level. We have a large percentage that are making that kind of income, that are trying to provide for their family. Now, my brothers come up. William Mosley is my brother. Most of you do know that by now. He has come up and he spoke very clear, very loud about we are in a state of emergency. When the basic family cannot provide basic needs. We're not looking for handouts. We're not looking for food stamps. We're looking to be able to take care of our own families. When I say below the poverty line, my own mother worked for the EOC right here on Old Dixie for 30 plus years. Her highest salary was $22,000. She raised 5 children. And at the time, she did apply for food stamps. She was turned down. She made too much. I'm like, whoa. But I'm kind of glad that we didn't go on food stamps. But she made it. She raised us. This area is in trouble, the blighted areas. And that's why my brothers asked that you all come, let's walk through Gifford. It's not that big. Let's walk through, let's stop talking, and let's get this place in motion. Right now, there's a lot of eyes that are watching this presentation. Every time we come forth, there are people all over the United States online watching this. And they're getting ready to come in to assist us, out-of-towners, getting ready to come in because they say they're not listening. We're watching them week by week. Your commissioners are not listening to you all. They kind of look at y'all like a joke. And so we're going to come in. Very soon, we should have another wave of people coming in next week out of D.C. and to assist us because we are, there's no reason with the amount of poverty, with the amount of wealth in Indian River County that we have this amount of poverty. People want jobs that can pay their expenses. I'll tell you a quick example of what happened to me. I'm what I call the lost children. I returned back here unwillingly because I had a father that was passing away, grandmother, and an uncle, matriarchs, and the people, the key people of our family. I didn't want to come back here, but I did. So I returned back here 18, 19 years ago, put in an application at Walmart. Know how much they paid me? $5.50 an hour. And I had just closed my store down, storefront business, and I was active duty Navy. So I went ahead, I said, okay, I'll just learn your business, $5.50 an hour. So I stayed there for 3 years, and they increased my salary to $7.70 an hour. Wow. Can you imagine? Just think, if I wouldn't have been retired and had some other money coming in, could I have made it? No. These are the salaries, and they're not too far off today. This is the year 2014. What, $7, $8 an hour? No one can live off of that, but people do. They make the best. We are in a state of an emergency in the Gifford, Walbassa, some areas of Oslo. There's no reason for this amount of blightedness, this amount of poverty. It's no reason for this. Now, we've been pleading the case. I'm tired of pleading, so we're getting help. They are coming in. The first organization, or the Black Lawyers Association for Justice out of D.C., they are coming in. And because I said, you know, we need legal to make this thing happen. I'm tired of talking. And they said, it's okay. We're watching. They're watching me now. So we need help. You're not going to help us, then it is what it is. But we did ask, and we did plead, and it's like we're being made a joke of. I wasn't here last Tuesday. I heard my name used so many times in vain, like, oh, she doesn't have the right information. When I brought up about the street lighting district, how we are consistently overpaying, $25 a parcel, overpaying by $18,000 to $20,000 each year, or there's a pattern. I got the report, but you got it flip-flop because I got the other documents. These are your numbers. So your numbers. That's
not correct. That's not correct.
I got your numbers from last year. I found my paper. So what I'm saying, I didn't create no numbers. I got the numbers from your books. I got from your websites, and I've been tracking. Other people are tracking too. This is a monstrosity. We need emergency immediately in our community. If you're not going to do it, okay. But anyway, I'm here because I'm also tired of talking. I need action. I'm a military person, and we're about action and getting some things done. I go to Grand Harbor once a month, and I'm like, wow, people live like this. I'm used to it, but I'm over at Gifford. Don't think I'm not used to wealth. I am. But I'm saying I live in the heart of Gifford. This shouldn't be across the track where the minority or the majority of the people are black and they live 200 to 300% below the poverty federal guidelines. Something's wrong here. Something very wrong. I know everybody feels very comfortable, I'm well done, and Vero's the place, but Vero is very dark when you have a group of people living in this state. I can talk about the school system, but that's another subject. Everything's connected. Now, I've said enough, and I'm just letting you know that other people are going to be here very soon, so that we can proceed with legal, because we have gone on deaf ear and we have tried to work with you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Is anyone else speaking on this item? Okay. Gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take a short break. We'll come back at 10:50.
all you've been through this week, all you've been through this week,
We'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. We have finished with the public items. Next, we had a addition to the agenda under the county administrator matters about the medical examiner and House Bill 301. Mr. Baird.
Yes, there's a proposed House Bill 301 which would keep the medical examiner for billing for cremations, and it would affect our area. It would affect our medical examiner because he did 4,650 cremations, and the revenue was $232,500, and the state wants to eliminate the ability for medical examiners to charge for it. So that would be and we'd have to make up that shortfall.
Who do they currently charge for that? Is it?
I do not know, but
I bet you it's the state.
Yep.
Going out on a limb.
Going out on a limb there, Commissioner?
So we want to oppose this bill. Obviously, it's going to affect us in a negative way. We would have to make up the difference in the medical examiner's bill.
So, Joe, your recommendation is that we add a opposition to House Bill 301 to our legislative agenda and instruct the ballot partners to add that to our list with them?
Yes.
So moved.
All right. We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner Flesher. Is there any discussion? Mr. Reingold?
Did you also, staff's recommendation, I believe, included adopting the resolution that was attached. I didn't know if you want to include that as part of your motion.
That's fine.
I believe so. That basically says that we're opposed to it, right?
Still second.
Right. So we'll adopt the resolution and instruct our ballot partners to add this to our legislative list. And that's a motion by Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Flesher. No further discussion. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Takes us into departmental matters. G, Office of Management and Budget. The Medtronic Physio Control Cardiac Monitors Miscellaneous Budget Amendment 009, memorandum dated February 24, 2014. And welcome.
Thanks, Commissioner O'Brien. Jason Brown, County Budget Director. Again, have with me John King and Brian Burkeen. Last meeting, February 18th, we were talking about the fire apparatus and the sheriff's vehicles, and the board directed staff to come back with this item on the defibrillators, the cardiac monitors. And what we were talking about at that time was maybe the replacement of 4 of the 19 units that are approaching their end of life. These guys were able to do a good shopping job, and with the trade-in of the old monitors, we're able to get 5 for $116,000, which was less than the $120,000 amount that we had done before. So we're recommending that you approve this for the current fiscal year, and then over the next couple of years, we will replace the remainder of those units as they approach their end of life.
Okay. Chief, anything to add to that, or we're good to go on these?
Very good to go with that, and Joe and Jason are both trying to help us get a replacement schedule that's going to be timely to our needs.
Okay, great.
What's the turnaround time from point of purchase order going out?
About 30 to 45 days.
Okay, good.
Motion from Commissioner Flesher.
So moved, and thank you for finding the true value.
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Davis. Are these ones I used?
Yes.
No. Let's double that order.
What'd you do, wear them out?
Well, I can only say this will be money extremely well spent, although I might have people that will debate that, but...
Oh, my, that was good.
Lord,
that was good.
Okay.
I did that. That was something I should have said.
All right. Yeah, you're surprised. You guys are slipping here. I'm one who's been up all night. Holy mackerel. Okay, we have a motion to move forward with the staff recommendation for 5 of the units by Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Next up is Public Works. An update on the canal monitoring devices for north-south and main relief canals to measure nitrogen and nutrient loads entering Indian River Lagoon Kilroy system. Good morning, Mr. Moran. Keith, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Chris Morrow, Public Works Director. I have with me Keith McCulley, our Stormwater Engineer. Last December, the board directed staff to move forward with the Kilroy program. The Kilroys are monitoring devices that are placed in the canals. You know, this is all being done in setting up for future anticipated TMDLs, or total maximum daily loads of nitrogen, that we feel that at some point the state is going to require us or limit our county's contribution of nitrogen, dissolved nitrogen, into the Indian River Lagoon. In some areas of the lagoon estuary, like such as up in Banana River and Mosquito Lagoon areas in Volusia and Brevard, they already have established TMDLs, and we feel that that's going to be established at some point in our county. The beauty of having the Kilroys is that they could be placed and constantly monitoring the amount of dissolved nitrogen as well as amount of flow heading into the Indian River Lagoon from the three main relief canals. At the time in December of 2012, the board directed staff to move forward. We contracted with Orca to place the three Kilroy units in the lagoon, in the three main relief canals. We chose the three main relief canals because they're the three main feeding tributaries to the lagoon. They contribute about approximately 97 million gallons of canal water per day average into the lagoon. These Kilroys were placed, one at the North Relief Canal just east of the US 1 bridge, just downstream of one of the bridge pilings. The second one at the South Relief Canal, basically at the same location, just east of the US 1 bridge. And then the third one on the within the main relief canal, also east of US 1, but a little further east, actually just east of the Country Club Drive bridge near the Vero Beach Country Club. The Kilroys were installed and placed into service towards the end of June of 2013. Since that time, they've been feeding a steady stream of data, which we can view on the Orca website. As time went by and we began looking at this data over a period of time, we noticed that the data would spike and be somewhat inconsistent as far as both the two factors that they were measuring, the flow and the nitrate, dissolved nitrates in the water. We began, as we continued to monitor them, we didn't have a lot of confidence in those readings because of the constantly changing and spiking data. So we decided to go out and take grab samples, physical samples of the water over a period of 3 days, which we did, actually 4 days, in early January of this year. And you can see the grab sample readings that are in the inset in red there. When we took those readings and placed them on a graph which shows our readings, which is this solid blue line here over a 4-day period, at the same time compared to the Kilroy readings of dissolved nitrates, which are shown in green, there really wasn't a good collaboration of the two readings. So we met, after seeing this and getting our own grab samples and seeing this discrepancy, we met with Orca, and they began, I think they had already been looking at this problem over a period of time and deciding what to do about it. So we met with them and said, what are we going to do about these readings? We can't continue to have this discrepancy. And I'm going to give them some time just after I'm done talking to explain where they are in the process. But they came up with some valid reasons for why they were getting the reasons that they got. And we think we're on a program now where we can straighten out these discrepancies, and all is not lost because they've kept all the recorded data going back to when the Kilroys first started reporting back in June of 13. And by adjusting their software, they're going to be able to make good readings out of the old data, and by making some adjustments in the Kilroy units for salinity and for turbidity in the water, which are the culprits they feel, we feel that moving forward we can get good data from this point forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Orca. Mr. Falls is here, and he'll explain where we go from here as far as the Kilroy program.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm joined Warren Falls. I'm Managing Director of ORCA, and I'm joined this morning by Dr. Edie Witter, our CEO, George Jones, our Special Projects Director, and Robin Danahauer, who's our Vice President of Marketing and PR. And Mr. Mora did an excellent job explaining some of what we've been experiencing, but I want to take it a little step further and show you what we're doing. There's a reason people don't try to use monitoring, especially optical monitoring in these canals, but if we're going to get answers to what's happening to the lagoon, we have to be in these canals. And we've been working in them now, as Mr. Moore said, for 8 months. We've been seeing some erratic readings, which he's identified, and we've been working to identify where the problems were coming from. Some of what we've been experiencing, this is the North Relief Canal shoaling. You can see a little to the right a big sandbar that's coming out. That's completely under the bridge at that point. I don't have a better photo. When we put those units in, we had 3.5 feet of water. We actually had to create a little dam barrier to keep our unit from being covered up with silt and sand during the time frame that we've been working up there. Same thing was happening. Back up one. Same thing's happening on the South Canal. You can see to the right, that's normally a 2 to 3 foot flow rate over there, flow path. It's completely sanded in, all the way except the little pocket where our unit is there. Since then, they have dug those 2 canals out. We have good water right now for the next few months. Nobody seems to know where that silting was coming from. We do know FEC was doing some track repairs, and part of their repairs is sanding the tracks afterwards, so it's probable or possible that that sand washed in from FEC and just settled under the bridge because of the turbulence created by the pilings, created a little eddy there. Some other things we've been working against is water coloration, water clarity. In these canals, that water can go from relatively clear to coffee within a day. And the optical path on these instruments is very sensitive, but it also has to work within a certain range. So if your optical path is set for clear water, you go to completely dirty water or coffee, you have issues. You have to change the optical path. It's not anything that's new to anyone doing instrumentation. I've had a number of conversations with USGS. They're doing a lot of work in Ohio and Nebraska. They're having the same problems. In fact, they're testing instruments in coffee and tea right now to try to work through the opacity problem with the waters. We stay in communication. If we figure something out, we'll let them know, and vice versa. The manufacturer's been really good working with us to try to work through this issue. They've machined special optical paths for us to even reduce their minimum optical path to try to make it work in even dirtier water right now. But those aren't some of the big issue. The big issue we found in these canals was bromide. We kept getting a bromide reading in a freshwater canal, which shouldn't be happening. Bromides are associated with chlorides. Chlorides come from salt, sodium chloride, salt water. After testing for a long period, trying to find salt or chlorides in these water, we kept coming up with freshwater readings. Until we dropped an instrument all the way to the bottom of the main relief canal, we actually got a salinity reading. You have salt water in the bottom of that main relief canal, and it's running between 0.6 and 0.8 parts per million down there fairly consistently. It's going up and down with the tide, actually. Where it's coming from, we don't know. But it is something that would be to consider keeping an eye on to see if it increases or where it may or may not be coming from. The other thing we found in some discussions was several uncapped artesian wells out west of town. Those are bleeding into the canal, which also bring total dissolved solids, TDS, which leads to chlorides, which can mimic a bromide signal. As our units were set up initially for fresh water, the algorithms in those units weren't calculating the bromide factor. One of the things that made us settle on this instrument in particular is the fact that we can store all of the raw data. And as Mr. Moore pointed out, from day one, we've got every parse of raw data that ever came into any one of these pieces of equipment, and it amounts to over 1 million parcels of data right now. So we can recalculate the software, or reconstruct the algorithm, and go back from day one and start post-processing this data and accounting for the bromides, and bring all of this information back into line again. Since day one, the first week we started, we've been hand sampling each one of these canals once a week, so we have a baseline of hand sampling to compare with the reading to make sure that we're within the ranges of accuracy for what you want to see with these. This is an indication of some of the post-parsing we're underway with. This is from the end of December to the end of February. We're still in the process. The dark blue is representation of the original raw readings, the base, and once we recorrected the algorithm for the bromides, the pink shows where the actual nitrate readings coming back into line again. We effectively just removed all the background noise that the bromides and the heavy TDS was creating. And at this point, you can see we're getting ranges of 0.1 to 0.5 for the most part. So we're well within the hand sampling ranges we've got right now, too.
Warren, could you go back to that previous slide for just a second? Sure. This is important here because if you remember, our grab samples were coming in around 0.21, which would be just under the 0.25 line there, and it's getting closer to what they've been able to patch that data and find. So they're kind of honing in on where we were with our grab samples anyway.
That's a good point. And if you see, your hand sampling was taken January 6th through the 10th of January. If you look at our the pink lines there, January, approximately between the 6th and the 10th, we're getting there. Let's see, is it on there? No, that's part that we're still processing out right now. But at the same time your hand sampling was underway with PACE, we hand sampled those same days in those same time frames. So we've been watching. As far as the flow, we've known from the beginning that our flow data was going to be compromised because of where we were required to mount these units. To get accurate flow measurements, you have to be away from obstacles that can create eddies or create turbulence in the flow pattern. We weren't allowed to mount out into the streams or away from some of the bridges. We were required to mount on the side of the bridge piling outside of the flowway, which creates an eddy around our instrument and creates an inaccurate flow reading. However, just to the west of where we're mounted is a surveyed-in USGS site that does have an accurate flow reading based on cubic feet per second, which is a graph here. And we have this up for a specific reason. If you look between December the 12th and December the 20th on this graph, you can see about a 50 cubic feet per second flow rate. And if you look at our post-process nitrate data for that same period of time, you're seeing about a 0.4 milligrams per liter of nitrate. Now, when you calculate this one, okay, turn the slide. If you take that 50 cubic feet per second at 4 milligrams per liter and do the calculations, 1 cubic foot equals 28.3 liters. 50 cubic feet per second will equal 16 liters per second. With nitrate at 0.4 milligrams per liter, it's entering the Indian River Lagoon at about 48,900 grams per day, or 108 pounds per day of nitrate that canal is contributing over that period of time. Well, after we finish our post-processing, we intend to give you a report on a month by month of the contribution of each of these canals to the river, and follow up from there. So if there's any questions, we'd be glad to answer them.
Okay. Gentlemen, any questions of staff? Commissioner Zark?
I have a couple of them. I think one thing's key to this to get these online and within the tolerance. What is the tolerance?
Plus or minus 2.
Plus or minus 2 is before the fertilizer ordinance goes into effect, as we start to hopefully see a change in readings to measuring you would expect to see something if we're taking something out of the water flow that's been getting in there. So making sure we're really in good shape before that first non-application period kicks in. Secondly, in looking at the monitored spots, the original ones down in the St. Lucie County, were you running into any, I'd call it the brine water or brown water problems when you have Lake Okeechobee discharging? Was that affecting any of those monitors down that direction? That's kind of an on again, off again. If it's really clean, if they're not releasing water, and then when they are, it's, looks like a giant.
Even though they're releasing and you have fresh water inflow, you're always going to have a certain amount of salinity in the water, chlorides, which is going to create a bromide situation.
Right.
Only pure fresh water would be minus the bromides.
Okay. And then as we go forward, has the sanding problem kind of gone away? I know you showed me some illustrations yesterday, and we talked about
for now it
FBC
has. They've dug the canals out, and we're back to some deeper water, 3 to 4. Who's to say? It's a combination of whatever's happening upstream and then any releases that may move it down the stream.
If we see that occurrence show up again kind of in a short window, I think if the sand's not there 1 week and we go back a week later and it's filled up with sand again, there's something that's accelerating that sanding process that's probably not just from the flow in the water. It's got to be whether it's coming from the train bridges or wherever it's coming from.
I'd agree.
The other thing that I wanted to make, let's see, go through, make sure you haven't covered all these. And your grab samples are done weekly?
Weekly.
Okay. And then the one chart that you had where it showed where the data is more in line, maybe just as something to compare to, is put the grab sample data just to show, so it's showing the grab sample and the new filter data is coming out within the same, kind of overlap. I think there was one of them that had grab sample and another one. Just to it's kind of like the backup that shows, hey, it's in the right tolerance range.
Okay.
But that'll be, I think, the big picture is one day to have an array of some type of means of measuring. I always want to know what's out there at I-95 and 4th Street or the other areas further west, and what is the change in the water quality as you go to the end of the system, as it travels through the system, comes out the other way.
It's an interesting dynamic that goes on in these, especially the way they're designed. In one of the graphs from the USGS site, you can see a ramping up of the flow rate, a spike per se. If you look at our nitrate, there's a spike of the nitrate at the same time. Now, at the speed these canals are running, there's a possibility that with that flow, it's scouring the bottom, picking the bottom up and bringing it with it, which would lead to an increased nitrate at that point, just for the period of the flow. And then it goes right back down.
And we do get those heavy rains that makes the flow really pick up sometimes. A couple Saturdays ago, I think 4 inches in under
Right.
2 hours. All right, thanks.
Okay.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman,
Fletcher?
and I just wanted to thank you for the update, the conversation that we had prior to this meeting as well.
Glad to do so.
Because, again, this is a new concept, this is a new application, and a tremendous commitment by the Commission, yourself, for the people. And I think when you have an anomaly in the beginning, when you have so many variables, it could be misconstrued as maybe this wasn't the right fit for the task. And most certainly you've adapted, and I believe that we're going to be looking forward to some great information. The addition is that non-eddy device. There's no patent on that. I think that'll resolve the sand issue.
I intend to discuss that. I went back to do so with the one of my chief engineer yesterday, and he was taken to the hospital yesterday with appendicitis. Had surgery last night. So as soon as he gets out, we'll bug him. But
no rush. Let's get him back to health first. But
Great.
And thank you for looking at that correction curve and making it happen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Glad to do it.
Anyone else? Nope. Okay. Warren, thank you very much. Chris,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Going on to county attorney matters. Item A, declaration of former county jail tower site as surplus property. Memorandum dated February 25, 2014. Mr. DeBrawl, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. The property located at 1725 17th Avenue is owned by the county. That's the site of the former county jail. Last year, that parcel was split and leased to the Boys and Girls Club, part of it, and the other part of it went to St. Francis Manor. Excluded from those leases was the existing tower site that's there on site. It's a 150-foot tall guide with guy wires tower that serves only one tenant at this time, and that's Verizon Wireless. The tower is pretty much a maintenance headache for emergency services. This is one of the towers serviced by emergency services, as there's really nothing nearby. The tower is entering the end of its useful lifespan as far as stability is concerned. There are no real plans to co-locate any other equipment on this tower, and it would have to be determined through engineering tests to see if additional equipment could be put up there. No one has approached us as far as adding additional things because there are other sites around the county that are newer and more optimal for establishing this. Due to the tower's age and condition, maintenance requirement, emergency services would like to try and sell the tower site so that they'd be rid of the maintenance of the area. There are existing leases that would still, or existing easements that would still provide access to the one tenant that's on the tower. And like I said, I should mention that lease expires in 2022. So as far as a discussion item today, if the board would discuss whether or not it wants to sell this location and direct staff accordingly. Let me just put this up in the Elmo so you can take a look at it. See that the tower is here, and that the guy wires run out. Over here is the old jail site, and the St. Francis Manor site is off these sides as well.
Bill, how does somebody get to it?
There's an easement from 17th Street that leads to it. And in discussions with Verizon, they're agreeable to being able to access it from different areas. We talked about using St. Francis Manor Drive as an access point. They'd simply be able to, or have to be able to get a truck with a bucket on it to be able to service the tower.
But I don't want to assume that Verizon would wind up, or whomever would wind up buying this. And so I don't think the county would allow for us to create a lot of any kind. I know we're in the city here, but we wouldn't allow anybody to create a lot that didn't have adequate access to.
Correct.
And so if that's the case, I don't, we need to address that to make sure that we have adequate legal and physical access, or at least legal. And I don't know whether an easement is what we're going to call the proper frontage for a lot. I know depending on the zoning, you've got to have certain number of frontage on a road, and I believe it's got to be right of way, not easement, for the access to be appropriate.
This is an interior parcel that would have to be created. The easements are already there that service it. They're perpetual in nature, and so I think you would have adequate access to the parcel. Especially the use here is a little bit different. It's
that's today, though.
Government.
I mean,
yes, sir,
what I'm worried
understand.
about is 30 years from now, whenever maybe a tower there is obsolete, or at the end of 2020. I mean, I don't think prudence would suggest that we look just for the next 2 years here as far as what that lot could be used for. Whenever we have the ability to perhaps remedy a situation and to make it proper, versus us just making a decision based on an existing structure there today.
Any other discussion?
Yeah. What do we do with the one guide wire that attaches to the ground outside of the footprint?
What would we do with it?
Right.
That would be part of the sale of the property, that easement, where there would have to be some sort of overhead easement that would be created to be able to accommodate that guide wire.
Okay. I think also maybe addressing Commissioner Davis's concern on where the lots are on the right side, there's a power line that goes down there and then I believe runs to the back that actually then runs overhead power lines that services the tower. So the city of Vero Beach must have some type of service way to service the transformers and the power lines back there too, even though it's not real clear where that might be, but I know from visually it's back there somewhere. And another question maybe for the county administrator. If you declare something surplus, can you put a minimum value of what you'd want to get for it? Or when you declare it surplus, if you get $1, does that mean the buyer gets it for $1?
You get to reject. We'll have in the documents, we get the right to reject all bids.
Okay.
That's correct. And you could also set a minimum bid.
Right.
You're better off just doing it subject to confirmation.
Council, what's the footprint size on that? It's not clear.
Bold right there. The footprint is about 32 by 24 feet as far as the fenced area.
32 by 20.
This area is fenced here.
We can do that, yeah.
And that's about 32 by 24.
We're talking about surplus in the whole gray?
Pardon me, I'm sorry?
We're talking about surplus in the entire gray parcel, or just that 22 by 40 feet?
No, just the footprint. The gray parcel, and then with easements for the guy wires.
I'm just wondering what we're going to do for crowd control on people lining up to develop that spot. We might have to call the sheriff now.
Or better yet,
and you can see the access.
What kind of income is this throwing off to us?
It throws off about $20,000 a year, but to fix a tower in the future is going to cost us about $400,000. So we'd rather give it to someone who would, we're looking at all of our assets, and if we can sell it, or we might not be able to sell it, but if we can sell it and get some money for it, rather than there's some repairs need to be done on it now, and have someone buy it, and if they can hang more things on it and do the repairs, we think it's we don't have anything of ours on it.
Right, and I get what you're talking about. Wouldn't it be, it would seem to me that there's value in having an existing structure, not necessarily at $20,000, and I see the liability, but just the fact that now somebody can put there's a 150-foot tower there that really, there's no complaints for the most part. There's value there. Would it not behoove us more so to try to enter into More so a long-term lease of some kind that somebody would be able to assume the liability of and then still pay us, I don't know, $20,000 a year, what we've been making, and let them go ahead and step in versus creating a fee simple ownership for a 24 by 23 spot in the middle of a piece of property that we currently own.
And basically, you're going to have an inaccessible hot dog stand.
I don't think access is
feasible. Yes.
I don't think access is a problem.
No.
As you can see, there are established easements, and you can see the easements coming right off. 17.
I'm clear with you on that. But Bill, looking at it,
but it might have more value being
as far as
the way it is.
My question is we do still own the pieces around it, right?
No.
Yeah.
We lease them. We've got a long-term lease. We
Right.
do own them.
Yes.
So we still own them, though, right?
Yes.
What would be the problem with doing a long-term lease on this 24 piece underneath it to get us out of the liability? Because, Mr. Baird, I agree with what you're saying. I have no problem with that at all as far as getting us out of building a $400,000 tower for a $20,000 a year rent. That makes sense. But I'm not sure that what makes sense is for us to have a long-term lease of a piece of property that we still own fee simple, and then selling something to a private entity fee simple in the middle of our property if we can get the same thing accomplished by doing a long-term lease that would quite frankly match the other long-term leases that are around it.
So then lease out
that site.
The hole in the donut.
Yes. Or let's lease out the site versus create a hole in the donut.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just throwing that out.
At least see what that brings back.
But and with the intention of getting us out of it, clearly. Because I don't want to maintain something of this cost that we don't need, that quite frankly would be better in the private sector's hand. And again, if it wasn't for us creating that in the middle of our property, I'd be all for. I'd make the motion to approve, but a long-term lease might be a better option.
There are companies out there that will buy these leases, kind of take over the income, pay us an amount.
Yeah.
The question has been the responsibility. Typically they don't like to take on the responsibility of maintenance, but maybe there's something that could be worked out.
And quite frankly, I could be flexible on the income we make. I think there's more detriment to the property than having a 24 by 23 hole in the middle of it versus any future income on a tower.
Actually, the property has such a long-term lease to both the boys and girls. I don't think, we'll ever get it back. I mean, we'll own it, but we don't get any revenue from it.
Yeah.
I tried to get revenue, but I was denied by the
No,
board.
that's why I'm thinking on the same thing is do whatever that, what is it, a 49-year lease we did with the boys and I don't even remember the length of it, but I know it was extensive. Why not do that again right here on this one and do one that will all those will terminate at the same time? That way, 50 years from now, whoever's looking at this, then there might be a different need than a tower in the Boys and Girls Club in St. Francis Manor on this piece of property.
It'd be best if we'd make it consistent with the Boys and Girls Club lease, which is a 30-year lease.
Even better.
Because St. Francis Manor is a 99-year lease that was started in the 1970s.
Perfect.
I'm going to be old by then.
And I think that really a 30-year lease is right in line with what I see with municipal agencies at the airport. Whenever you have, they do that all the time.
Except the FMPA, they're 50.
Okay.
That's a whole nother avenue.
Yeah, I thought we might not get any takers on this, but I thought it's something we need to look at, and if we do get a decent price, or if we don't, it's something that I thought we needed to explore. You still have the right to reject.
Let me ask you this, Joe. What if, let's suppose that, okay, nobody leases it, and then nobody really wants to buy it, maybe they do, but just say they don't. In theory, because we have a long-term lease with a communications company on there, are we responsible for maintaining that $400,000 tower for a $20,000 a year?
I think we are in that lease.
If we are, I just would submit to you that we're not going to get any takers on this.
Yeah, well, here we might get another company that wants to hang something on it or look at it because it's in a location. In this type of business, we had our equipment on it, but we took it off because we didn't need it. We put it on other towers.
Yeah.
But you might have someone, because of the location, wants to add. There's companies that do that buy the towers and add other people to it.
Okay. So at this point, is there
we
peril
may not
here?
get any takers.
Is there any peril with this tower? Is there any danger right now? Maintenance issues?
Oh yeah, we need to. It's there are maintenance issues right now. We need to actually improve There's a building that houses equipment that needs to be definitely taken care of.
Needs to be secured?
Yes, it's in bad condition.
Well, Dylan, let me ask you this. If we have an existing lease good through 2022, whether we surplus this and sell it or put it out for a new lease, how do we get out of the existing lease?
I'd have to take a look at the contract and see what our termination rights are under that agreement, and I'd be happy to quickly get on that.
I can address that point. The contract calls for sort of an impossibility clause that if the tower falls into disrepair to the extent that it's not worth repairing, the lease would then terminate. They'd be allowed to take their stuff off of the tower, and everybody just walks away from it.
Okay, so we do have an escape.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, good. That's true.
That makes sense, yeah.
There's also an assignability clause on either side in this lease as well, so that if, originally it was some tower system, or it was Primeco Personal Communications LP that has been assigned to Verizon. Likewise, we would be able to assign our rights and interests under the lease agreement to a third party. Consent would have to be given, but it cannot be unreasonably withheld.
So, Bill, would our logical first step be then is to go back to the existing lease, pull up that clause, declare the tower unfit for service, and notify our intent of killing that lease off. And then we can go out either for bid, as Commissioner Davis is suggesting, for a new lease, or if we don't get something on that, then we would look to surplus it. But wouldn't that be our first logical step, is to put out the intent that we're not going to continue it on this course?
No, I don't think so. The tower is of sufficient strength that it's going to be able to withstand what is there now. However, going into the future, repairs are going to have to be made to the equipment that's on the ground. Additionally, the tower is of such a condition that, more stuff probably can't be added to it. And as we're getting closer to 2022, it's doubtful that we're going to be able to see any revenue coming from that tower, simply because of its age and also its location. So it's...
And we'd probably take the tower down, which is another cost we would have.
And I don't know that for what that would be a bad thing, just to go ahead and just take the tower down and incorporate that into the Boys and Girls Club's lease for the 30 years versus us surplusing it out. It really does concern me putting a fee simple hole in the middle of a piece of property we currently own.
I can just give you a brief history on some of the things that's happened. Is that these types of issues are an evolution over time. They don't just happen. At one point, this county owned approximately 10 acres in this area, and that's where the jail was. And in the late 70s, early 80s, this tower was constructed for the radio system that the sheriff's office used. As the county began to grow with the fire rescue radios were added to that tower, and some police channels were added to that tower, and it kind of got full use of the structure at its time. Then the board made a decision in the mid-90s to go to 800 megahertz radio system, and during that time, we had to surrender all of the VHF licenses to be assigned the 800 megahertz licenses, and all the public safety agencies and all the cities and all the county all went in together to put together a joint radio system so that we would have some interoperability among all the groups. The sheriff's office has moved out to their new location. The property's been subdivided a couple of times. They've grown some recreation in the area, and the radios began to come off this site. And so the thought at the time was, we have a tower, we don't have any government radios on it, let's see if we can lease the tower out and make some money off the tower, at least until the short term, until at some point a decision is made about the future. Now we're at the point where the tower is reached its end of life, so it costs us a minor fortune to maintain it, to get back $20,000 a year, and we're bringing it to the board. This is the time that we put off the decision until about now, and we need to do something.
Commissioners, my suggestion is we should have a list of people that have applied for towers, wanted to put towers in our community. There's one up there at the Russell property that's just gone through. We've got one Jeff Thompson had on his piece of property. So there are people out there that are doing this. Right. I suggest we call them up and we say, hey, listen, we've got this tower site. We want out of it. Do you have an interest in it? And then they'd come back and say, as just one of the fifth of this board, I would just assume do something less than full fee in the arrangement of that. I want out of the liability of it, and even if it means a reduced amount of income from it, I still think in the long run for the taxpayers of Indian River County to have that piece of property not encumbered by a hole in the middle of it with a fee simple ownership of some different entity other than the taxpayers of Indian River County is not prudent today.
And that's something that we could do. The tower lease would then shift to something similar to the Hobart Tower lease.
Exactly.
Where we own the property and just derive the income from the entity that's operating the tower.
Yes, sir. That's my intent.
Is that a motion, Commissioner Davis?
Sure.
I'll second it.
Further discussion, it still would be done. Leased property still must be put out to public bid.
Yeah.
So obviously we'd solicit those folks that have prior interest in tower sites around the county.
Yeah.
Guys.
Yep. And believe me, somebody needs to call Sprint and let them know.
What, is the dead zone there?
Weird. I get in this remote place called Vero Beach in State Road 60 and calls. But anyway.
So, Commissioner Davis, just for clarification for the clerk, your motion is to have staff put this out more for bid for a lease and not a fee simple sale, and preferably tie the lease period in with a 30-year existing lease with the
Boys and Girls Club.
Yes, sir. Is that okay? And Commissioner Zork, you
that's good with the second. And one that specifically addresses the concerns that the county administrator brought to us, which is the liability. Get us out of the liability of it.
Okay. Mr. Reingold, are you clear on the motion?
I have written those notes down, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? On motion by Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner Zork. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Item B, under the county attorney matters, is the City of Vero Beach Electric Utility authorization to travel to Tallahassee for legislative session. Mr. Reingold.
Good morning to the board. On January 21st, Commissioner Zork brought an item to this commission concerning a proposed local bill brought by or sponsored by Representative Debbie Mayfield concerning some jurisdictional issues related to the Vero Beach Electric Utility. And at that time, the board made a vote to do three separate things. First off, they authorized the county attorney's office to draft a resolution supporting the local bill. Second, they wanted a letter drafted for Speaker Rutherford requesting the Speaker to set public hearings on the local bill. And third, and most importantly, actually, with regards to this item, they had asked that the county attorney's office work with our lobbyist on this issue. So what the county attorney's office did, pursuant to the direction of the board, was we drafted the letter and the resolution. However, pursuant to the direction of the board, the county attorney's office was working with our lobbyist consultant. And what the advice we'd gotten for our consultant was, well, wait till the bill gets filed. And then the best direction you should have is then once it gets filed and reference to the committee, to reach out to the committee chair and then have that item set for hearing. And so what happened was we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for this bill to be filed. And finally on Sunday, I saw that it popped up as being filed, which wasn't a surprise. It needed to wait 30 days from the date of advertising, so there was a delay that was in the system. But now that the bill has been filed, it has not been referenced yet, but now we're going to work with monitoring it being referenced to committee. And so at this point, I can finalize the resolution. I've got a House bill number. It is House Bill 1289. And I've actually worked with our lobbyist in drafting the economic impact statements for this bill and the local certification forms. So it is all in a posture to move forward in the legislature. And so what I wanted to ask for today is, based upon the conversation I've had with our lobbyist group, was that this bill may travel quickly because it's a local bill. It could get referenced, and the next thing you know, it's set for a hearing in a couple days. So I wanted to get pre-authorization from this board to authorize any of the commissioners or any of staff to be able to go up to Tallahassee on short notice and be able to speak on the bill when it comes up. The other issue I did want to reference today, and there's been a lot of allegations both in the newspapers and at several meetings of the City of Vero Beach City Council, is one, there was an allegation that there wasn't a public meeting or public hearing on these items, and that just was not true. There was a public meeting. In fact, it was at the Indian River County legislative delegation meeting that was held in December. This item was specifically talked about. what I thought was quite interesting was at the last city council meeting, City of Vero Beach council meeting, Pilar Turner even acknowledged that. She said, wait a minute, guys, I was at that delegation meeting, and that was clearly on the agenda, and it was mentioned, and several of us were there. And so it's hard for, at least Pilar Turner's words, to state that there wasn't notice and there wasn't a public meeting and a public opportunity to speak. The second issue that was raised was that there was a deceptive ad in the paper concerning this item. There was an ad in the paper, and it did state that the City of Vero Beach, Indian River County, and Indian River Shores were going to be seeking legislation. I have to acknowledge that, yes, the City of Vero Beach did not request this legislation, but what had been included in the local certification form was that it affected the City of Vero Beach, Indian River Shores, and Indian River County, and that I thought it was most important to at least acknowledge that there was going to be an impact on the City of Vero Beach rather than not include them in any type of notice. And what had been, and the office or the county attorney's office was not involved in preparing the notice, but I would like to state that at least that what was used was a typical form for all these types of local bill notices. But I just kind of want to clear the air that the goal, I believe, was the intent to be overbroad in terms of its impact on the local community, and so that the Indian River County, Indian River Shores, and the City of Vero Beach were all included in terms of the concept of who was going to be impacted by this. With that, I just turn it over to the board for your questions and respectfully request your authorization to go to Tallahassee if necessary.
Okay, Commissioner Zork?
Do we know, I know Senator Negron had indicated earlier that he would file a companion Senate local bill or some matching pairing legislation to help carry that forward in both chambers. Do we know anything from the lobbyists where that might stand?
I have not seen that, but I will certainly reach out to our lobbyists.
Okay. And secondly, I've been getting kind of some blow-by-blow updates as FP&L is making some presentations at the city meeting, and I think this avenue needs to be explored based on some of the things that are being discussed and what may or may not happen over there today, that this issue needs to stay on the front burner until the overall situation is resolved. And I guess I'm going to leave when we're finished here and go over there and catch. They took an hour lunch break today, and then announced that at 2:45 they're going to
15 minutes.
Cease public comment, and at some point some of the members are going to be leaving, and it may or may not actually get to a vote before the public comment is over. So this issue is this approach still needs to be pursued with every effort that we can, and partnering also with Indian River Shores as well.
Commissioner Zork, do you mean going up to Tallahassee and pressing the legislation?
Wherever, right.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if you meant that one or the idea of the public notice.
Okay.
So I want to follow up on the public notice, though, because I was at most of that meeting, and some of the people who today say that there wasn't public notice were at that meeting with a great opportunity to speak. And I'm talking about City of Vero Beach City Council members. And they seem to be perfectly aware that there was a public meeting at that time and made no mention that there wasn't appropriate public notice or anything like that. And some of the ones that were complaining today seem to be on that date in favor of going forward with the bill. So it's remarkable that because they've changed their opinion, that they're saying that things which didn't happen. They seem to be confused in that. So, and if there are no other comments, I'd be happy to move the staff recommendation.
I'd like to second that and make further comment.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Flory, second from Commissioner Flesher. Under discussion, Commissioner Flesher?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to echo that as well. In watching the meeting, I know that there were members up on the dais that encouraged participation, and I believe that I don't believe there was a single response at all. So I believe that this is just another avenue of static noise to interfere with the message, and I think we have to move forward. And thank you for the clarity, Councilor.
And then Commissioner Flory, just to clarify the motion, it's to go ahead and authorize the travel as well as the resolution and the letter?
Yeah, to authorize the travel to Tallahassee for the county attorney, members of staff that are necessary, and the county commissioners.
And then what about the resolution and the letter?
With the resolution and letter.
I don't think the letter necessarily that I drafted was helpful. That was the original concept that we were going to ask Weatherford to set the hearing. I think based upon the conversation I had with our lobbyist was that it's going to be more important to reach out to the chair, and I'd be happy to work with our lobbyist to get the chair to set those hearings.
Or any other appropriate letter at the time that
Perfect.
to send.
I like that.
The additional robust matter.
And your second is good with that, Commissioner Fleischer?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion?
Actually, discussion not to change the vote, but at the last FMPA meeting I attended, the FMPA executive director did announce they will be making efforts to, as a group, go to Tallahassee to promote the things that are best for the FMPA as a family, as they like to talk about it. Trying to monitor to see when is that visit going to take place. It would probably uniquely timely be around the same time that this would probably come up, and having opposing views being presented at those hearings, it would definitely be important to be there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. No further discussion. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? That carries unanimously. Next is item C, a resolution eliminating rate equalization charge in non-unincorporated areas of Indiana County. Memorandum dated February 21st, 2014. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you to the board, to those in the audience, to those watching. First off, I just want to thank you for the last item. And second, at our last board meeting, I believe that was February 18th, Commissioner Solari had brought an item to the board requesting the elimination of the 6% equalization charge that was originally approved per Resolution 9516 by this Board of County Commissioners. After the discussion, there was a 4-to-1 vote to eliminate the surcharge. The county attorney at that time suggested that it might be best to present back to the board a resolution adopting the elimination of the charge, just so that we'd have another resolution overturning the original 9516 resolution decision. Therefore, I have drafted that resolution and presented it to this board. I've worked with the county staff to put in a effective date. The effective date that we had put into the resolution was October 1st, 2014. The concept there is essentially that would run through the end of our fiscal year, and then we would start fresh. Staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolution or make any modifications as you so wish. And therefore, I turn it back over to the Commission.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Any questions of Mr. Reingold?
Just a clarification. The current equalization charge is paid to the general fund since the debt service, when the facility was required, that the utilities department picked up. Once that was paid off, the fee basically stayed in place, but because of the enterprise fund, or possibly because the enterprise fund requirements of the utility department, once that debt service was gone, is that when it shifted to go into the general fund, or when
the debt service is still outstanding? This was not a pledged revenue source for the water and sewer bonds. The water and sewer bonds are still outstanding. This surcharge wasn't a pledged surcharge. We thought, since we looked at it the same as our franchise tax in the unincorporated area, and in the unincorporated area, we take the franchise tax and we put it in the MSTU, unincorporated MSTU, as a revenue source. So what we thought is, since this was paid in Sebastian, we put it in the general fund to offset taxes countywide.
Okay. And I know when we bought the system, it only had a handful of customers, a few hundred, and the current bond issue debt that's out there covers, I guess, part of the initial purchase, but all the expansion that's taken place?
Yes.
Or is the initial purchase, it was a high purchase value considering number of customers?
Yeah, I think it was $3.5 million, or $5 million for the, it was a bad, Sebastian had got into a bad arrangement, and they would have had to pledge their government revenues, their general fund revenues, half-cent sales tax, because there was no way that the customer base could cover it.
Right. Okay.
And so we pledged the money to purchase the system. We did a bond issue and do all the improvements, also the expansion. So that's it was I think the bond issue's 20-some million. But
yeah, we used about $21 million. It was about a $38 million bond issue. $21 million of it approximately was for the city of Sebastian purchase and improvements to serve that area.
But Joe, clarify something for me, if you would. When you say "we" in this situation, "we" is ambiguous. In far as who paid for that, is that "we," the county, the general fund, or "we," the enterprise fund, which is standing as a standalone business?
The enterprise fund did the bond issue.
Okay, so the enterprise fund did the bond issue. The enterprise fund customers are paying off the debt.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
And then, so that was different than our general fund where the dollars were going, right?
Yes, and the reason we put it in the general fund, like I explained, we didn't think it was fair to stick it in MSTU since Sebastian's not in the MSTU. But it was to match our rates outside, so it was fair. What we did is the equalization charge was to match the franchise tax that was outside the unincorporated.
Joe, again, I'm confused. Doesn't Sebastian charge something like a franchise tax?
They did that on top of, they've got a utility, they did that on top of their prerogative. We have no rights. They did that on their own.
So that's because a franchise fee is a charge imposed upon a utility for the grant of a franchise and for the privilege of using the local government's rights of way to conduct a business. So what Sebastian was doing is just what they ought to do, similar to what we did when the gas company came in and wanted to use our right-of-ways. When the gas company came in, didn't they decide they wanted to use our right-of-ways and we charged them a franchise fee?
Yes.
Okay, and so when somebody comes in and wants to use our right-of-ways, we might charge them a franchise fee?
Yeah, we charge FP&L. We charge City of Vero Beach customers, electric customers. We charge
and Sebastian
water and sewer. Our water and sewer haulers are franchise. They use it right away. We charge the cable. We used to charge the cable. We charge, but we can't charge. There's a charge that the city gets to charge on telephones. We're not allowed that charge.
But let's go back to just say the FP&L. So we charge them for a franchise fee for the property that's in the unincorporated area of the county. We don't impose a franchise fee on FP&L or others for that property which is inside the municipal limits of
We don't have the ability to do that.
Oh, okay. I just want to be clear on that because that's what we're doing in Sebastian in this case. We're charging a tax on the cities of Sebastian in lieu of a franchise fee, which we couldn't legally do. I just want to.
Yeah, they came and put
how does the water get to Sebastian?
Through our right of way.
Through our right of way.
Yeah, through our right of way.
Thank you.
Do we charge them?
Yeah, we do. We charge them a 6% equalization
charge,
which because y'all want to get rid of.
To get there,
our right of way.
Are they in our right of way from North RO?
Our plants are not.
I think what the right of way that you're talking about, where the equalization charge is whenever it leaves our right of way, then we start taxing them for Sebastian's right of way, where they get our equalization fee and then the franchise fee on top of that from the city of Sebastian.
Right.
Well, I think it's a utility tax in Sebastian. It's a 10% they added on after the arrangement. They said it was going to be a couple of years, but it's been.
I mean, when you get outside of the city limits of Sebastian, then we have our franchise fee of 6% on top of that, just as.
But they don't pay it. Sebastian residents don't pay that. They do not pay that 6%. Sebastian residents do not pay our franchise fee.
That's
they
correct.
pay an
That's because it's
equalization
not
charge
our right
instead.
of way. When they get outside the city limits of Sebastian and then get in our right of way, then they pay it like everybody else.
So the water that goes to Sebastian goes from the water plant at the fairgrounds?
There.
Hobart, right. So it goes up 510, so it only goes on our right-of-way till you hit Sebastian.
Right.
And then we've got the back feed on, and then we go through and get Roseland.
Well, that's true. Then you have, on the other side, it's...
And then our wastewater has the same thing.
Yeah.
That would be coming from Central. Yeah, that would be going to Central.
So does Sebastian charge then the residents of Roseland for charge a franchise fee because you use the utility pipes to go through the city of Sebastian to Roseland? I mean, that's the analogous one to the one that Mr. Baird just brought up. That's how ridiculous this is.
Yes.
Now, you know what it is? If we move forward with this, we're creating two classes of customers for county water. And, you know, we all don't like how Save Our Homes works because it creates different classes of property tax payers just because you lived in a house 2 years longer than your neighbor. Jason, can you put up one of the charts there and just look at this? So what we're going to do is we're going to say that to somebody in the unincorporated county, if you're going to use 6,000 gallons of county water, this is Gifford, okay, so for 6,000 gallons, you're going to pay to the county $61.41. However, if you live in the city of Sebastian, those same 6,000 gallons, you're only going to remit to the county $56.60. You've got two classes of customers there for the same commodity that we are selling.
Did you say the county, the county or the total bill?
This is for if you look down the one column there, it says 6,000 gallons.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your service availability charge, consumption charge, the water charge, sewer availability, consumption, all the charges. The difference is we charge the county customer the 6% franchise fee.
Right.
We used to charge City of Sebastian a 6% equalization rate so that those numbers at the bottom would be equal, that each customer of the county would be paying to the county the exact to the penny.
Okay, well,
the exact same dollars to the county.
But where's the city's franchise charges on top of that? They would be paying the Gifford.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, sure it does.
Well, no,
if it's coming out of my pocket, it's mattering.
No, what the City of Sebastian charges the city residents is up to the city.
It's the same as City of Vero Beach.
No,
you need for the record, that's about like saying, okay, don't worry about federal income taxes if we have a state income tax.
Yeah, because that's a separate pot.
You need
That's
to
a separate
separate the
entity.
rates from the additional taxes.
No.
And that's where the rates are the same.
So the citizens of Sebastian are paying an additional 10%.
You know what? That's between the citizens of Sebastian and the Sebastian City Council. If they don't like that 10%, they need to go to their elected leaders and tell them, we don't want to pay 10%. Okay?
But they're maintaining the right of way.
We're creating two classes of customers here.
No, I don't.
No, we're putting our head in the sand if we ignore this.
We're going to collect, this is like going to a gas pump, and if you pull up, one pump says Gifford residents $3.50 a gallon, and the next one says Sebastian residents $3.25 a gallon, because we feel sorry that you're paying an extra tax up there.
And then whenever you get done with that, then you write an additional tax or payment to the city of Sebastian to equal out exactly what the Gifford residents have been paying.
No, it's
not. Yes, because they have the fees in addition to what and you're mincing words here by saying to the county, to the county, to the county. Well, you know what? There's also, when Sebastian residents pay it, it's to the county and to the city. And so it equals out to be the same. And that's where it's, and you know what, and quite frankly, I would maybe agree with this a little bit more if it didn't go to the county's general fund, and I think it's hypocritical for us to sit up here and have a tax on a utility go into our general fund whenever we're sitting here slamming the city of Vero Beach for doing that with an electric plant.
Okay, I'll put it in the general fund. I'll put it in the enterprise fund. I'll be glad to put it into the utility fund. I can do that too.
I think it's too little too late for my vote.
And it's
It's fine too. You're just trying to get we won't even go into what your real purpose of this was. But let's hear.
The real
see if
purpose
there's anybody
was
from the public who wants to speak on this.
Well, and that's my second point. If you look at when we did this, these chambers were empty. I bet none of you have gone to your constituents and said, hey, by the way, are you okay with this break for Sebastian? And by the way, to cover this break we're giving Sebastian, we might have to raise your property taxes.
I got a call from a city council member in Sebastian saying, I hope that you support the Commissioner Solari's recommendation on that. So, I mean, granted.
Oh, yeah, it makes them look good.
No, wait a minute. This is not about appearances. This is about, this has got a misnomer.
What Chairman O'Brien just said was very apropos, the idea of doing it in public. What this additional unjust tax does is hidden away in the tax bills. Yes, it will mean that our general fund needs an extra $200,000. But we should be taxing the people that $200,000 at the public hearings when we actually discuss the budget and taxes. That is the proper time to do this, and that's when people would be more interested in the budget. So I'm perfectly happy to let the public come in and see how I'm impacting their taxes at the time they expect them to be done, and in a very public and transparent manner. This is the same type of underhanded, non-transparent manner that the city of Vero Beach used to take the focus off of their ad valorem taxes for years. It's wrong. It shouldn't be done. There's a better way of doing it. In other areas, we do better than this. We need to do
and you know what?
The city of Vero Beach charged county residents a 10% fee to go into the city general fund, and those monies were used for the benefit of the city residents. The 6% equalization rate that we collect from the city of Sebastian goes into our general fund, which provides benefits to the entire county. We don't say, hey, we're not going to spend any money in Sebastian even though we collected the 6%. We spend a lot of money with the city of Sebastian out of our general fund that the residents of Sebastian are paying into. I think it just like the unincorporated county people are paying the 6%. And the fact that if the city wants to charge additional for city services, that is a matter between the city and the city residents.
Well, I'll be very happy to move the attached resolution.
Second. Board discussion.
Oh, and I see we have an audience participation request to speak.
City managers don't count.
Mr. Chairman, when you mentioned the equalization rate, the word equalization actually has me more concerned than anything else, because it's 6%. It's intended to our forefathers intended on making it equal for the municipality as well as the unincorporated area. But the municipality has every right to tax on to that service that comes into the municipality. Is that not correct, Joe?
Yes, they have that right, yes.
So why should we have a fear if we want to reduce this, take this away, with the threat of being told that, well, we're going to have some combination of increasing taxes, upping the millage rate, or perhaps making another accommodation? We've done a tremendous job. Joe, you've done a tremendous job. We were operating on, in 2006, $495 million operating this county. And this is going to the general fund, and we're currently operating at $255 million plus. Joe, I think you can do it, and I think you can cover that $200,000 real quick, because you are an expert. Thank you.
You know, I find it funny that this same board, when we talked about the franchise agreement with the city of Vero Beach for South Beach, this board voted unanimously that we wanted the proposal where we split the equalization rate. So you all were glad to grab 3% of it from the South Beach folks, but now all of a sudden it's, well, let's give Sebastian a break and not collect any of it. So,
No, we should have got the full 6% because it's the franchise on our land down in the South Beach. We went to split the 6% because we were trying to make the best deal possible so that the city of Vero Beach would go for it. We were willing to give up that 3% because at the end of the day we were talking about a total of $75,000 split in half. So for we'd give up $37,500, which should have gone to the county, so that our customers could get the right deal done for them. And that's where you're wrong here, Commissioner Bryan, because you're focused on what is best for the government of the county. Some of us are focused on what's best for the customers and the residents of the community. That's the distinction. I mean, I agree. This tax is something we could do. I've agreed from the start. The question is it right to do? And it's not right to do. But if your main focus is making sure that the bureaucracy is entrenched and well-fed, then vote against the resolution. But if at the end of the day you're focused on what is actually right for the citizens of the city of Sebastian, then vote for the resolution.
And Commissioner, all I can say is I'm looking out for the unincorporated residents that are going to be paying more to the county for 6,000 gallons than the folks in Sebastian.
No.
And I don't think that's fair to the constituents of the unincorporated Indian River County.
Not in the end charge if they're going into the city of Sebastian, because they're paying an additional fee from the city of Sebastian, and the municipality has every right to apply the additional fee. In addition, I did want to make a disclaimer. I am a Sebastian City resident. I do not have the Sebastian Service County water to my residents, and I wanted that clear to the public as well as the board. And Councilor, I do pump my own water, and I guess I pay an electric bill, FP&L, for that right and privilege, but I do not consume county water at my residence, and I wanted it clear to Councilor as well as the public. Thank you.
Mr. Nonamaker, welcome.
Yeah, I'm here, Jason Nonamaker, City Manager, City of Fellsmere. I'm representing the entrenched, well-fed bureaucracy side of this equation. First, a couple clarifications. It seems to be that we're conflating utility tax, franchise fee, equalization charge. Utility tax only available to cities. It's a home rule revenue, very few of which we have. So they're very important to us. because, in theory, cities are supposed to offer a higher level of service. My own opinion is that the most insidious form of revenue we collect is the ad valorem. Y'all are all familiar with inequitable ways that that's applied and how that's it's just painful, frankly. For you take a new family, what they pay for a house right next to somebody else who's had theirs with the homestead exemptions and all that. So to me, it's a very important part of diversifying our revenue base. I think that's fundamental. We also capture revenue because of the homestead exemption, properties that are only marginally, if at all, on the tax roll. Now, I'm here from the city of Fellsmere, and you would think, why do I care about this right now? Well, we actually have a couple of properties that are served by county utilities that this charge would be waived on. I look at it not as the equalization charge, but a franchise fee. And it's something that has caused us a problem in the past when negotiating with the county for future utility services. I think when we've talked about water, sewer, there's a certain inevitability to a consolidation, I think. It might be 20 years away, but I think it's going to happen. And looking at that, when we've talked to the county about servicing, at least at the outset, the southeast portion of Fellsmere, one of the things we were looking for was a franchise fee. Now, from my perspective, representing the city, I wanted the 6%. Just like we charge the gas company, FPL, you name the list. And Jason, to his credit, he wanted his 6%. And that's kind of where it was left off. And we have other pressing issues, so we kind of let it die. Now, I heard Alan Palakwich make a presentation, where he started to talk about this sharing potential. And to me, that made sense, and it kind of made a light go off for me, because we're talking about both municipal and county right-of-way. When the county's providing the service, the city users or end users, I could see a justification for splitting the franchise fee. So I think if you get away from the equalization charge aspect and think about entertaining franchise agreements with the cities you're serving, it's got some merit. And that's something, at least on behalf of the city of Fellsmere, I'd like to see happen, is that we look at a franchise fee and that we talk about the distribution of those revenues. It's not inappropriate. It's not inappropriate for the franchise fees to inure to the general fund. That's a decision y'all make. Utility taxes, I can tell you, are general fund items. And there's nothing hidden about it. Every time we go through the budget process, as do y'all, all your revenues are called out clear as day. Now, if people aren't paying attention and don't want to participate in the process, well, you get the government, you deserve. And that's not taking anything away from it. I think we're a very good government. I think it is very transparent. And I don't think this is an overly fat government. But anyway, that's kind of my take on it. So I'd request that y'all entertain franchise agreements with the cities, at least our city. If Sebastian wants to forgo the opportunity, that's fine. Plus, we're only talking about 2 businesses right now. But where are we going to be 20 years from now?
We have we actually on the purchase, we have a franchise agreement with Sebastian when we purchase it. We have all the rights to.
Right. And that's history. Yeah. It's a whole different circumstance. Yeah. And what I'm talking about is a clean sheet, at least for us.
And when we purchased it, this is how the equalization charge. We actually negotiated with them when we were purchasing it. They were we had to go to the city council. They were well aware of it and willing to pay the equalization charge because they couldn't expand the system and meet the needs of their residents. And that's how we all got it. Same as you, we could sit down and negotiate.
Jason, so what are you suggesting as far as, and I know, since you brought up, future cooperation, what I'd really like to know more about what you have in mind.
Maybe we talk about a franchise fee. Talk about a franchise agreement.
And go ahead and insert.
At least for the city of Fellsmere. I can't speak on behalf of the city.
Yeah, that should really intrigue this entire board because, quite frankly, I think for us to have one system, just like the city of Sebastian is and that kind of stuff, if we can help with the city of Fellsmere with their future needs, I think that's appropriate and something that we ought to entertain, and we should do it right now whenever we've got, I want to say, basically common cool heads between the 2 councils. So,
well, I don't want to be accused of that. But it is going to be important for us. And I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to admit that we're sensitive to revenues. I mean, that's, we talked about the LRTP, and we had a hole in that. We forgave that revenue that was anticipated. And it seems like these holes keep creeping up, and where are we going to be 20 years out? Because the biggest thing this county has to sell is quality of life. Mm-hmm. And I know that's something y'all all want to maintain, so I just think we should give that a lot of thought.
Okay. And just to throw one other twist into it that deals with Fellsmere, and just using the gas as an example, my understanding that the gate station that serves Fellsmere to the west, but also went east on 510 and down to Winter Beach, that gate station for the gas company is in the city of Fellsmere. However, the revenue that line, once it leaves the city of Fellsmere and goes east to Winter Beach, the county will get the franchise fee for that, but the gas transmission originated in the city of Fellsmere, but you won't get franchise fee revenue because of the end customer's zip code or address.
Wherever that end user is.
Right.
So you go from one
So it
franchise
passes through maybe state right-of-way, federal right-of-way, I-95, county right-of-way. It shifts, but it only gets paid where it's actually residing.
Where they consume it.
Right.
Where they consume it is where they...
So, I mean, on the bill example, on the whether it's the 4,000 or 6,000 gallons, people got to look at what would you pay at the end of the day with the associated fees of whatever the municipality is charging to look at what you write the check for at the end of the month. So I know that it shows Gifford being higher, but the reality is the Sebastian residents aren't paying $56.50. They're paying whatever the city of Sebastian adds on to it, which then makes them paying more than Gifford residents.
Right, but they're getting additional services that the city of Sebastian provides to the city of Sebastian residents.
What additional service they're getting? They're getting water out of the tap.
No, 10% is going to the city of Sebastian to provide additional services to the city residents of Sebastian.
To fund their police
Mr. Chairman, I think
department,
we're-
parks
At this point, I think
department.
we're beating the dead horse. I'm ready to call a question.
Sure.
Well, let's bring in the ME.
Bring in who?
The ME for the dead horse.
Oh. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this?
And we got to get that before the legislation, because we'll pay
have
the
a
crematory
motion.
price.
Yes, I would like to speak. And sitting here listening to your arguments and just in the area of fairness, it should be across the board rate, whereas even though they may be paying more, but they're getting more out of the Sebastian residents, out of the 10%. By overlaying this increased tax burden on our community. Yes, we're selling quality of life, but there's some of us residents are not getting the quality of life, and that's not fair for us to even dare bear any additional costs. So I think it's not fair. I think they should be paying a 6%, because the additional 10% that they're charged or they're surcharged by the community, they're being reimbursed through other, again, benefits. So that's just my opinion, because I think we bear enough burden, whereas, we're already underserved and underpaid. So to bear any additional burden, we can't afford it, the bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Mosley. Any further comments? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Nay. Resolution passes 4-1 with Commissioner O'Brien opposed. There being no commissioner items, there's no special districts and boards. Gentlemen, with that, we stand adjourned.
Exactly.